Okay, planning board, we are live. We are recording. Phone lines are off, and you are good to go.
Very well. Thank you very much. Welcome to the June 15th meeting of the Town of East Hampton Planning Board. We are up top here in the dais because we have three members who are with us virtually, and that'll be Randy and Sharon and Ed. And you have the four of us here. We have no regular meeting matters. In other words, no resolutions, no boards of review, no public hearings, but we do have four matters, well, three matters on for site plan and one matter on for an urban renewal map. The matters that we have on tonight for site plan review are the Springs General Store application, the American Tower at 103 Flaggy Hole Road, T-Mobile generator at 411 Wainscott Northwest Road, and the urban renewal map at 137 Springs Fireplace Road. So we will begin with the Springs General Store application. Marco is going to be here for the planning department. I believe I see the applicant and its representative there in the first row, and Lou Cortese will be here for the board. So go ahead, Marco.
Okay, good evening, board members. I'm just going to put on the aerial. So this is an application to convert an existing 175 square foot storage shed to a retail store for wine sales. It's to add an indoor table with 4 seats to an existing retail takeout food store, to maintain 3 outdoor picnic tables for patrons, and to abandon an existing kayak rental use. These parcel is roughly 59,000 square feet to the tie line, or 57,000 square feet excluding wetlands. It's zoned NB, neighborhood business, and is improved with a 2.5-story retail building. It has a second floor accessory apartment and multiple accessory structures. The existing retail store is known as the Springs General Store and is considered by the town of East Hampton as a historical site. The planning board had last granted site plan approval in 2001 for a commercial kayak rental use. The planning board has also reviewed a preliminary site plan for this site not too long ago, sometime this year. The project is a type 2 action pursuant to SECRA and Chapter 128 of the Town Code. So as noted before, it is zoned NB neighborhood business, and it's permitted to have 2 commercial uses. Currently, the site is used for a retail takeout food store and kayak rentals. It appears that the proposed alterations would maintain the definition of a takeout food store, which is defined in the memo taken from the town code. The applicant is not increasing the maximum number of allowable uses by replacing the kayak rental use in favor of a retail store. 2 commercial uses are permitted on a single commercial property. The retail use, the new one, is utilizing that 175 square foot storage shed. I will put up the plans actually for that one right now. There are additional plans, but this one is probably the best contrast. So just for the purposes of screen sharing, this will be the one I'll use for the time being. These changes to the shed are mostly interior changes with shelving for stock, counter, and register. The planning department notes the following details and information of the new use that should be clarified by the applicant. This includes the anticipated hours of operation, the number of additional employees, is the new use to be part of the existing takeout food store business and their operations, is the new use to utilize any space from the principal building or other existing structures for storage of related items. Is there to be the sale of other items outside of wine, such as cider, beer, or other alcoholic beverages? Is there to be consumption of alcoholic beverages on site or within the existing takeout food store? And are special events anticipated to be held on a regular basis? The planning board should discuss if any additional information regarding the proposed retail use should be submitted. The sale of alcoholic beverages will require approval from the New York State Liquor Authority, which is SLA. The planning department recommends that the board require any documentation from the SLA application to be submitted to the board's official file. The planning board had discussed the layout of the parking lot and during the preliminary site plan application, and was found that the layout should not be substantially altered to maintain the overall historical appearance of the Springs General Store. According to the town code, the applicant is required to provide a minimum of 11 parking spaces. Here we have 8 proposed in the front and 5 proposed in the rear. A 63-foot length post and rail has been proposed along the front yard by Old Stone Highway, which will support 3 spaces. Other aspects of site plan design should be discussed, and additional detailing should be provided by the board, provided to the board. The planning department notes the following details, and that should be provided by the applicant in order to ensure that the parking areas will meet the appropriate design requirements by town code. So these include, is the loading area for trucks proposed, or is there an existing space in which trucks offload goods? Various existing and proposed surfaces are stated, however, should be delineated and their surface profiles should be detailed. Does the parking lot sufficiently handle town code standard of 2 inches of rainfall? Absent of that finding, the applicant may be required to add additional drainage structures. Do the non-functional gas pumps still retain any fuel storage tanks? It is the understanding of the planning department that these have been removed. Access way to the rear parking lot should demonstrate that they meet the town code standard of a 20-foot unobstructed path. Revised ADA parking spaces should be submitted. The planning board should discuss if any additional information regarding the revised parking layout should be submitted. A major component of the site plan review is ensuring that the proper ADA accessibility is provided to the public. Although the last site plan approval had designated one of the spaces in the front of the principal building to be for ADA, it does not appear any ramps or accommodations were approved to ensure proper access was provided. That spot was basically where number 5 is, where my mouse is. That was where it was previously designated. The applicant is proposing an ADA space in the rear with an asphalt surfacing and new connecting ramp. The chief fire marshal has submitted comments dated May 4th, 2022, and noted that the elevation details for an accessible route to the general store and the converted shed should be provided. In addition, it is required by ADA that at least 60% of entrances shall be accessible. The marshal had noted that individuals with disabilities should be provided access to the main entrances, as other patrons are. The marshal's comments have been included in the file and memo. The applicant has stated on their proposed plans and in their narrative that the existing sanitary system will be abandoned and replaced with a new IA sanitary system. During the preliminary site plan application, it was understood that an upgraded sanitary system may be eligible for town and state grants. Although the overall design of the sanitary system will require additional review from other town departments, such as natural resources and zoning board of appeals. Information regarding existing and proposed sanitary flow, the location of the proposed system, and sanitary details such as the profile, distance to groundwater should be submitted to the planning board. It is noted that the proposed fence along Old Stone Highway will require approval from the zoning board of appeals as it is within 150 feet of the wetland setbacks. In addition, the new sanitary system will also need their approval as it is within 200 feet of wetland setbacks. The applicant should depict a 150-foot and 200-foot wetland setback line to delineate areas of natural resources special permit jurisdiction. Improvements within this jurisdiction, such as for grading land and building structures, will require an NRSP. The applicant should submit an application to the zoning board of appeals if they have already not done so for the improvements. The application will require approval from the ARB as well, which is the Architectural Review Board, for exterior changes to an existing commercial site. Improvements such as the windows for the converted shed, the fence, and ADA ramp will need to be reviewed by the ARB. So in conclusion, the application is incomplete. The planning board should discuss with the applicant further information to be submitted regarding the use of the site and the parking layout, as well as ADA access.
Thank you, Marco, for that report. Very thorough. Mr. Bennett, do you wish to speak about the application?
That's certainly John Bennett, the applicant, Daniel Bennett from Principals and Max Shannon. So I just wanted to
We need you to use the podium.
Yes, please. Thank you.
Oh, you're very welcome. Well, the first thing I wanted to talk about was our attempts to meet, make a ramp ADA compliant. And it's a thing that I'm not unfamiliar with. You have a historic structure, and we're agnostic on where that ramp goes. I will tell you that based upon my past experience, where in all the East End municipalities, where you can provide compliant ADA access, but minimize the effect to the historic facade, of which this is clearly part of. You don't have to be familiar with East Hampton that long to know how historic this is, not only for locals but in the art world. The attempt is to minimize the effect of the historic facade. If the board wants us to put a ramp in the front, we'll do it. We're absolutely agnostic to that. We thought the idea was to put it in the back so that we would run into fewer concerns with the Architectural Review Board. We could go to them and see what they think, however you want to deal it. But I certainly don't want to have the board think that we're stuck our feet are stuck in concrete, or we have any strong feelings about that. Again, the reason we put the ramp where it was to try to look down the road and foresee concerns that, based upon my experience appearing before just about every architectural review board out here with a historic structure, they would want to see the historic facade impact lessen. But again, that's where the board wants it. We're more than happy to put it there. I don't want there to be any thought that we have any problems one way or the other with that. So that it'd be interesting to know what the board's thought was, or we could just go to file with the ARB at the same time and see, maybe it would be a good idea maybe we should just get that application filed and see if they have any strong feelings. If the ARB doesn't mind, we'll put it in the front. I think that's probably the best way to handle it. But again, it's subject to your jurisdiction as well. Yeah, please do, Mike. Yeah.
Michael Shiano from InterScience Research Associates. I actually spoke with the Chief Fire Marshal today about this. He clarified that the 60% requirement of 60% of the access points being ADA compliant is actually only for new buildings. He did stress that in his reviews, he does like to kind of try and push the envelope to try and help people with disabilities as much as possible. However, because technically the only actual alteration we are making to the Springs General Store building is actually the ramp, we wouldn't necessarily be required to provide access to 60% of the openings. The existing shed is at grade, so all we have to make sure is that where the retail is going, we would just have to make sure that the surface at which the entrances are is capable of providing safe access for people with disabilities. And what essentially we would do is that we would submit details about why it is that potentially that we wouldn't be able to provide access to the front, either due to historic reasons and also just the actual construction of the front of the building is such that The front porch area is actually set in concrete. It's not like that it's made of wood or something where you could easily add a ramp to without some type of structural change to it. And also, I know that one of the doors in the front is less than 36 inches wide, and the other one, the frame may be 36 inches wide, but when you have the door swing, the actual space in between may still be not wide enough in order to provide ADA access under the code. So in order to provide the proper egress and ingress to the building that's required for ADA access, we thought that the side door was the best because of the historic nature of it. So I just want to make sure that was clear.
Okay.
So that's, I don't know how you folks want to.
Well, we'll take that issue up in our discussion, and I'm sure that if the board has questions specifically, we'll ask them.
Fair enough. Then I just wanted to respond to some of these questions that the staff had. Anticipated hours of operation for the new retail use, no later than 9 p.m. Number of employees, 4 to 5 at shift at the most. Is the new use to be part of the existing takeout food store and operations? No, it's a separate retail use. That's why we're here. It's a new separate retail use. Is the new use to utilize any space from the principal building? No, it's not shown as such. I was sort of scratching my head on that because we've shown a retail sale of alcohol in a separate and related building. The premises currently has now shifting to the Springs General Store. It currently has a cider and beer license. Again, we wanted to make very sure that on the shifting to the retail aspect, that's for only wines, organic wines, absolutely no spirits there. We didn't want to have any issue whatsoever with that. Any special events anticipated on a regular basis? No, the only thing that the operator tells me is that on occasion they may have a chef. What was the word? A residency chef that comes into the area, but nothing of the sort of. When you talk about a special event, to me, that's like where more than 100 people are anticipated. I don't. Forgive me, the code may be different, but it's certainly not going to be some sort of magnet for special events or anything like that. There's really not an attempt to change the basic function of the Springs General Store.
You did skip the second to last one.
Is the consumption?
On-site
Oh, yeah, no, you're right. I'm sorry. Is the consumption of alcohol on-site with it? Yes, subject to SLA approval, there would be consumption allowed on-site.
And that's
not in the retail store.
That's what I'm
Not in the
wondering.
retail store.
So would it be that a person would be able to buy a bottle of wine in the retail store and then consume it on site at the existing building?
Yes, subject to, or on one of the outside tables.
Right.
Subject, of course, that's the SLA application is pending. There are two separate applications
Yeah, I wanted
pending.
to ask about
One for that, the on-premise consumption,
that. Right.
and then one just for the retail use in that rather small shed.
And the on-premises consumption application, that also encompasses the beer and cider that's presently being sold at the main
Yes,
building?
Yes, it would be.
Okay.
Yes.
All right.
So it'd be beer, cider, wine, but nothing,
But no spirits,
no spirit. There's
and no on-site consumption of spirits.
no Boilermakers.
All right.
No,
Half a
don't worry about any shot in the beer things.
Yeah, right.
Really not
Just
any
the
attempt to do anything like that. One of the things I was most concerned about is that some people thought that this was going to be an attempt to morph this into something. The operator and his partners are own a couple of restaurants in New York, and as you said to me, the last thing I need is a place where we're not closing the place, at 9 o'clock as opposed to, into the wee hours. So there's no attempt. I was very concerned. People thought this was going to morph into some of the things that have happened out here, which understandably are problematic. No, the idea is to have a retail store here and to service the local community. Maybe add that, hopefully add that retail wine aspect of it, but still keep it low key as it should be.
Does it presently have an on-site beer and cider consumption?
Not
So-
consumption. You can just identify yourself.
Yeah, thank you. So,
So you cannot legally
Mhm.
open a bottle of beer and drink it on site.
right, that was exactly my question. Right now, you can't do that.
Cannot do that.
Okay, so,
I'm not saying, and again, we're not the operator. I'm not saying that doesn't happen sometimes, but
well, we have to be concerned with what you'd be permitted to do.
permitted.
Right.
Absolutely, yes. But again, there's Daniel and his partners are not the current operators. I don't know what happens there. If somebody goes outside one of the tables and buys a can of beer and opens it up, I'm not foolish enough to think that never happens, but that's not part of the current use.
Thanks.
Just some of the other things I wanted to.
You covered all the bullet points on page
Yes,
4 of 7.
I wanted to cover the ones on the following page. Truck loading. No,
I just want to make a clarification.
Oh.
The number of,
If you would, it's better for the LTV.
sorry about
Thank you.
I just wanted to make a clarification. The number of employees that you mentioned is for just the retail store when you, okay, it's just one person and they're not 4 to 5.
Oh, for the retail.
Yeah.
Well, actually, the question was number of additional employees. So I guess what you should, to answer that fully, tell us how many, if you know, employees are there now and how many if you don't know, you don't know.
Don't know.
But, and how many will there be if this application is approved?
So if the application is approved, I don't know how many there are now. I would guess no more than 4 in the kitchen for what we're intending. I don't think she has more than that now.
Mhm.
And then just one person in the retail store. So a total of, that's why I said 4 to 5.
In the retail store, you mean behind the cash register?
No, in the wine shed.
Oh, in the wine sheds.
Yes. So 1 in there
Mhm.
and then up to 4 in the existing Springs General Store.
And that would be kitchen staff and
And someone at the
cash register.
Exactly.
Okay.
Thank you for clarifying that as well, Tony. Loading area for trucks proposed, or is an existing space? There were none shown on the last site plan. Intention to do so. Again, we're trying to keep some of the stuff informal. If the board wants one, we'll put it there. Various existing and proposed surfaces are stated, however, should be delineated. There are surface profiles. We'll do that. We'll take good care of that. Does the parking area sufficiently handle a town code standard of 2 inches of rainfall? The entire parking area is pervious. Again, does it? Probably not, because you don't have, what would you, dry wells and the like, because you don't have not really a blacktop. Is it, or what is it? What is it? Is it stone? What is the surface of the? It is blacktop.
parking lot?
Yes.
Yeah, I think it's fine.
Okay. Provide some dry wells if that's helpful. I don't think there are any there now. So we'll provide that sort of information. Always a good opportunity to provide for some recharge. So let's take a look at that. Mike, if we can take a look at that and have somebody come up with some drainage coefficients and stuff like that, and we'll try to take care of that. Do the non-functional gas pumps still retain any fuel storage tanks? No, they were all removed in 1988, which is not surprising because that was the time when this county in particular came through pretty aggressively and made sure all those tanks were removed throughout the county and stuff like. But the actual pumps have to remain as part of the census place. That's part of the approvals. We'll look at the access to the rear parking lot to demonstrate the need for the code standard, and the revised ADA parking spaces should be submitted. And I guess that's part of the whole conundrum as to whether or not, where it should be and where the ramp should be located. We did have a post and rail fence in front to try to not, as you would find in a suburban area, formalize the ingress and egress. That's pretty much the plan now. There's a very small part of that post and rail fence that is within the 100-foot setback. We're just going to take that out. I mean, I talk about the tail wagging the dog. I don't want to have to go look for a special natural resources permit for a relatively small piece of the post and rail fence. Let's do away with it.
If we were, I believe that the jurisdictional boundary is 150 feet.
Yeah.
And we can clarify this with the
I was saying
town.
we need an administrative permit.
Exactly.
Yeah, but we certainly don't want to jump into the 100 feet setback by putting a post and rail fence, a portion of a post and rail fence. We would just take that portion of it out. And again, if you'll remember, it was a while ago, but the whole idea was, you essentially had this wide open, there's really no curb cuts there, it's just a wide open area. So the thought was, how do you try to control the traffic in and out a little bit more, but still not take that, historic and rural sense of place from there? And we thought just some sections of post and rail fence, which is what we have proposed to implement. We'll just take the one portion of it that dips into that 100-foot wetland setback out. Yeah, that was your suggestion. So, but it's not. It's a very small section that's within the 100 feet. We'll just take it out and leave the rest of it. So I think we have some homework to do. The SLA permits are pending. One for the retail sale. And again, the reason we chose wine is because we didn't want to, quite candidly, we didn't want to be competing with any of the liquor stores whose primary goal is to sell hard alcohol and spirits. Wanted to have it, a softer, friendlier touch. And so those two are pending, and we'll get you the information that we've used to file with the SLA and make that part of the file.
Yeah, it'd be a good idea for the SLA copies of the SLA applications.
Absolutely.
To be forwarded.
Frank, who's the SLA lawyer in New York, do that. There's not 1 square foot of addition.
I'm sorry?
There's not 1 square foot of addition proposed. The only additional structure really is that, other than the only additional structure is the ramp wherever we're going to put it. I'd like to think we should leave the ramp where it was proposed. Just really start mucking around with the facade, and there's no attempt to denigrate or something. I think the fire marshal said that the attempt is just to try to balance all the competing, really human aspects here.
Yeah, well, the ADA, it's got prerogatives and primacy.
Sure.
And
As it should.
And it's right. Yeah, as it should.
As it should.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, it's something that this board is very cognizant and will respect, but, we understand you're dealing with a historic structure. And so you want to be respectful of that as well.
So I guess the question is, is there a jurisdictional problem with us just getting before the ARB even on an informal basis? Because that seems like something that would be helpful for this board.
Refer to counsel on that.
They normally, I know lots of times people will put the application in and the ARB just kind of holds on to it to the site plan.
Right.
But if you wanted to, this is a little bit different because you're having your whole plans basically based around this
Right.
Frankly, I try to set up a meeting with them.
Okay, on an informal basis.
Yeah, the counsel, David McMasters, he's down in the attorney's office.
Mike, could we try to do that? I just think it might be helpful.
The only thing is the ADA is really a planning issue, and I think the ARB is more aesthetic. So if it's determined that it should be in the front, I think the ARB then works with that to make it look as good as possible. Whereas if you go before them and they say, we want it to look like this, and the planning board says, well, we really think the access should be here, then you've sort of wasted your time.
Okay.
In the past, we, where the application went first sort of varied.
Yep.
And the town is trying to route it through the planning board first
Oh, no, I
for
get
that
it.
reason.
Yeah, no, I get it. But what do I say?
I'm not discouraging you from talking to whoever you want to talk to. I
No,
just-
but at the risk of sounding brusque, the buck's got to stop somewhere, and you guys are going to tell me where you
Well,
want
I think
it.
it's up here.
If it's ADA, it stops here.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So, how are we going to deal with that? Do you really?
I think we should talk about. We should talk about access.
If you're done with your presentation, let's hand it over to the board.
Okay, yeah.
So it may be possible to put a ramp still on the side of the building with side entrance and have the ADA parking in the front. We would have to demolish, we would potentially, we have to look at the measurements and see how high, because you need one, for every inch of
Yeah, the
rise,
slope is gonna.
you need a certain slope. So in order to make that slope, we may need to demolish the shed and move the AC unit that's on the south side. We have to see how that all works. Not the retail
I
shed,
was about to
a very small shed. If you just look at the
Yeah,
Yeah.
careful because it's not part of the
character, exactly. So I'm just saying, the only thing that I'm pointing out is that it would be possible to still put a shed if we were to move the ADA spaces to the front. So there's a few other options than just either all in the front or all in the back.
Although I don't want to step on my senator, but I'm very concerned about demolishing accessory structures. And certainly
Those of us on Zoom cannot hear what you're saying.
Well, you need to be on the.
certainly most even accessory structures.
Thank you, Ed.
Even accessory structures can be deemed part of the historic fabric of a site.
Let me ask you, Marco, do you have any photographs of the general store in the file?
I can pull those up, but you have to give me a few.
Okay, well, you do it while, and then if we can, maybe we could shift over and let the board bounce things around a little bit. So Lou, you ready to?
Yeah, I'm ready to
Take
roll.
the helm? Go ahead.
Okay, well, first of all, I'd like to thank you, Mr. Bennett, for agreeing to put in an IA system. That's very gratifying to me and I know to the rest of the board. I know you weren't obligated to do so, and your agreeing to do so is very much appreciated. Thank you. Yeah. Okay, all these other issues that we've gone over, the list, if you will, you answered most of those questions. The ADA ramp, that's something that it seems that you're amenable to doing whatever is mandated by the regulations and so forth. And I'm sure the planning department will work with you to find a mutually suitable solution. So I don't feel that that's a big issue at all. The drainage issue that I think that was on one of Marco's list of items, I think to me, that's an important issue that needs to be resolved, and I'm sure it will. So that brings me to the issue that I need some clarification on, or it may be problematic. And let me tell you how I've seen it, and you tell me if I've had the wrong perception or if I've made the wrong conclusions. It seems to me that the times that you've come before this board, the presentation that I heard was that all that was happening was that a shed that was previously used for storage is now going to be converted to a retail wine shop for off-premises consumption. That's what I heard. It was only revealed to me after it became known to the planning department, your SLA application, one of your SLA applications, that you've made an application for a liquor license for on-site consumption of beer and wine. So, and also on that application, it mentions that there's going to be music that's being requested. Well, it's checked off as yes, so.
Sunday,
Yeah.
I think we were thinking potentially Sunday jazz
Okay.
is the only
But
thing.
anyway, I'm just trying to describe to you
I-
the
I-
picture that I've developed in my head, and I'm describing it to you to get your response. So these are the things that I saw. So you can agree, I'm sure you agree, that having that kind of information come in the way that it did to me, my perception was that it is maybe some segmentation is going on here, or perhaps you're trying to get an approval for one thing, but then sort of, to use your word, Mr. Bennett, morphing into something that really wasn't what we thought was being applied for.
Well, it's very important that and I'm glad you're bringing this up, because the last, as a local resident for most of my 65 years, one of the things that I've bemoaned is seeing establishments that were very quiet turn into neighborhood issues. And it's a real concern that everybody should have. It's a concern that I have as a resident. It can't be a restaurant. It can't be a bar. It only has your code only has a 16-seat maximum. So just to use probably a really problematic example. I mean, what's the place in Montauk? Is it like the Surf Club or something like that? I mean, my big concern was that somebody thought that there was some attempt here to get the camel's nose in the tent somehow and have it morph into something. It's a 16-seat. The maximum number of seats I can have here are 16 seats. If we want to have some sort of limits on amplified music. I think he's talking about one night on Sunday night, a jazz night with the acoustic jazz. It's not meant to be some sort of club or anything like that. Hours of operation, 9 o'clock. I mean, it's so far away from the stuff that I live in Southampton, and Elm Street in Southampton with these two clubs has become an absolute mess. Those are the streets. I live on the street that I grew up on. And that's the last thing in the world that anyone wants to have happen here. That's not the intent. That's not the purpose at all here. The purpose is to have a retail place for the sale of wine, and on occasion, if somebody wants, and mostly for off premises, but if somebody wants to sit down, if the SLA allows it, and open up a bottle of wine and sit either in one of the 4 or 5 seats in the Springs General Store or the 12 seats outside, and have a paper cup with a glass of wine. Yeah, we thought that would be a nice thing.
It wouldn't prevent anyone also for a larger mass of people to congregate standing up. I mean, just because you have 16 seats doesn't mean you could.
Well, I would be happy. We would be happy to talk about any sort of restrictions, so this doesn't become something that anyone would.
Well, that
fear.
would be great.
Yeah, there's no attempt to. The last thing, I mean, the thing that creates a problem with these places is that, and we all know the type of places we're talking about. They have certificates of occupancies for restaurants and for bars. They have unlimited hours of operation. The SLA you can keep them open until 4 a.m. We're talking about a place that's going to close at 9. People come by and buy some groceries and sit down and buy some ware there, and maybe have a pleasant sit outside. We could limit amplified music. We could limit speakers. We could limit lighting. Whatever sort of precautions that you would want to make sure.
That's good of you to suggest that, because I think that would make me feel more comfortable. Absolutely. Because it is in a certain neighborhood that you wouldn't want that sort of party scene to start to bother the neighbors. And
not only would people be mad at us, they'd be mad at you for allowing it. So I get it. No, I get it. I said to Daniel, listen, the one thing we have to do is make sure that everybody realizes that the last thing in the world anybody wants is one of these places that was a sleepy little establishment, and that turned into one of these clubs. We're so far away from that. Just the very nature of what we're doing here, the number of seats, but any other restrictions or guidelines that you want to put on this to make sure that it can't morph into that, we embrace. That's not what we're here for. Not what we're here for. Essentially, we want to turn it into maybe a little bit more higher end of a purveyor. It's really what's going on here.
Well, no one has a problem with doing that. So that's all the comments I have. Just want to end by saying that I would like to take you up on that last suggestion that you have, and maybe we can work out some language.
Absolutely.
That would make us feel make me feel more comfortable and get you what you want.
Yeah.
All right.
And we could even say only straight ahead jazz, no avant-garde stuff.
I don't know if it's in our purview.
No, Dexter Gordon, but no late years Coltrane. Okay.
Any Miles Davis is fine. Actually, no. Let me amend that. You're right. Okay. Let me go over to the folks who are on the screen. I see Sharon is there. Sharon, let me start with you, and then I'll go to Ed, and then Randy, and then we'll come to the board. So, Sharon, you have anything?
Yeah, I mean, first, just full disclosure, I used to own the Springs General Store, and I'm the one who got the kayak permit, so I'm a little sorry to see that go after 3 years of working on that permit. No, I think it's probably a nice idea, and I agree with Lou. I think some restrictions on what you're allowed to do there in the evening would be a good idea. I think right now the store closes. I had it open till 7 or 8, but I think she closes at like 4 o'clock in the afternoon. So right now they're used to a very early close down there at that store. So you don't want to, create a scene too late into the evening. I don't think that would be. I mean, we had neighbors when I put the kayak proposal in that were worried about noise from kayaks. So, I just remember being at a hearing and they just were worried that we were going to have, a lot of loud, when people talking in the back, renting the kayaks. And so you have the neighbors in the back are very, very close to you. So I would just, think about that when you're, thinking of the music venues that you might want to have there on Sundays. But there is a history of having guitars there on Sundays play, but not till 9 o'clock at night again. So yeah, I mean, I think like Lou said, the ADA and the drainage, believe it or not, I don't think that parking lot floods a lot, but a little additional drainage would be great just for the environment. And that's it. Yeah, I think if we can just get some restrictions on what you want to do in the late night, it would work.
Great. Thank you, Sharon. Ed?
Yeah, so two things that really jump out at me that I want to thank the applicant for. One, like Lou said, I really am grateful for the fact that you're willing to put in an IA system. I think it's really important in this location, and I thank you for that. And I very much appreciate your desire to kind of keep the kind of rural and casual and informal feel of this in place to the greatest extent possible, while still folding in things like ADA spaces and ramps and so on. It's a tricky thing to do that, and I really appreciate where you're coming from about that, because no one wants to see this turned into a Disneyfied version of its former self. Before I continue, I did have a question about the current proposal for the ADA ramp. So it seems to me that where that entrance now is sort of goes into a room where there's a bunch of refrigerator cases on that side. Are you proposing to kind of reconfigure the interior in some way to make that more of a kind of a public space where the ramp would now go in? You were just showing it a moment ago. Oh, there we go. Okay. So is there an opening there now, or you'd be adding one? I'm just curious.
There is an opening there now. We would have to widen it in order to make sure that it is the proper width possible. I think right now that door is only used for emergency egress, and there are. If you were to go into the store now, I believe that there are some racks of goods or something like that for sale. But that would just be kept open, and you'd be able to. There'd be enough room in order to get around inside there on that side.
The coffee station is in the front, right?
Yeah. Yeah, this is the back.
Right.
Yeah, right. This is around back where
the proposed seating.
Right.
Yeah, I think there are things that are now in front of that door, but in any case, I don't want to get too deeply into the details of the ADA ramp at this moment, but I just wanted to say that I think that is a good solution. I totally understand the difficulty of trying to make the two front entrances ADA compliant. I think there are going to be some issues around, the bend that comes into the main part of the store in front of the counter. There are going to be, a few issues there around access, but I think it's probably a really good solution to think about the side. So I just wanted to say that. But, kind of more importantly, I think, so you kind of characterized this as kind of a sleepy little establishment, which is really not what it is at the moment. I mean, I live very nearby, and I'm probably there I at least drive by if I'm there buying stuff pretty much every day. And, particularly in the mornings, in the summer and on weekends, it's really heavily subscribed. There's no doubt about that. And it is a community center for Springs. It really truly is. And we, those of us who live in the neighborhood are very used to having access to many more than 16 seats outside and around it to, meet friends for coffee and whatever. There's been, so as we know, that's many more than are allowed. I don't want to say too much about that, but it's been a very nice luxury for those of us in the neighborhood to have, code on that not be enforced all these years, quite honestly, right? There are chairs in the front. There are probably 8 or so picnic tables between the ones in the front and the ones on the side. So, people are used to gathering there is what I'm saying, right? And that isn't going to change, right? So the thing that worries me a little bit, and I understand why you'd want to have an on-premise part of your license for serving wine, but I don't know. Given the fact that the history of this place is it is a gathering place, I have a hard time imagining that people are just going to 16 people are just very discreetly going to sit at their table and have a cup of wine, a glass of wine in a paper cup. I think, this could easily turn into something else. There's a history of having music here, as well. And we've all enjoyed the fact that, many more people than what are really kind of allowed here have been, patronizing this for years and attending those kinds of events. So I'm just a little concerned that adding that additional perk, if you will, to the residents of Springs of having the opportunity to have a glass of wine there is going to lead to it being used in a way that maybe you're not really anticipating. That I'm not sure what to do about that, but I just wanted to put that out there. Right.
And I appreciate very much what you're saying because it's a realistic, more empirical take on what's going on there. And I'm wondering, do you perceive a negative impact if the on-premises consumption is approved?
I mean, I think that there could be, and I'm not saying that I don't support it, but I know there are many people in the community who have heard that this is an aspect of the application who are very unhappy with it and who really do feel strongly that there will be a negative impact. I'm on the fence about it, quite honestly. I like the idea of it as a community center. I like that piece of it. I do. But, clearly our remit here is to sort of shape this application in a way that, make sure that what operates here is sort of within code, right? So.
I appreciate it, especially, I mean, we are all familiar with it. You're there on a daily basis. So I wanted to, your input on it is important. Okay. Anything else? Ed, before I
No, that's it.
over to Randy? In that case, thank you, Ed. Randy?
Hi, can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
A little echoey.
Oh. So like Ed, I frequent place and, I love it there. It's a great place there aren't that many places where you can sit and talk with people and have something to eat or a cup of coffee. And I appreciate what the applicant wants to do here, but I've noticed for a long time, I'm sure everyone listening, what seems to happen on the East End is that people sell stores like this or, high profile sites. This is my opinion. They sell them for too much money. And then the people who buy them are stuck in this position of trying to wring more money out of the operation. And they come to us and say, I got to pay this huge mortgage and I've really got to get a new income stream here or the numbers don't work. Well, you know what? If the numbers don't work, don't buy the place. So here, so first of all, I want to mention that I think the town purchased a facade easement on this building, and that should be part of our deliberations. We should have a copy of it. The planning department should know what it says. We should know what it says. We should know if what we're considering conforms to the easement. I believe the town paid a considerable amount of money for this facade easement. I heard that at one point they were even thinking of buying the vacant lot next door, but I don't think that ever happened. I agree with everybody else. The handicap is, we do occasionally refer things to the Handicapped Advisory Committee. I have a feeling that the notion of driving all the way around the back of the building to that space, but I'd like to hear their input. I don't know how about the rest of the board. Whatever the fire inspector and says, but the Handicapped Advisory sometimes gives us a good read on these things. So I'm having trouble, like Ed, I think I'm having trouble with this notion that right now this site is pretty low. I'm looking, these maps are so small on paper copy, but I think we're talking about site elevations. Maybe Marco could help me here. Something between 4 and 12 feet. Is that?
No, if they heard you, Eric, on that.
Yeah. Okay.
I was
asking the elevation.
Yeah, I can put that on.
Randy, I think it's roughly like 4 to 10 feet, something like that, as opposed to up to 12.
All right, that's good. I mean, that's all we need for now. But 4 to 10 feet of elevation, and on the surface. And then we've got groundwater. I don't know, in places like that, my experience has been it's somewhere around 2 or 3 feet above sea level, the top of the groundwater table. So you can see there's really no room there to have dry wells and with separation to the groundwater. And septic leaching rings with separation to the groundwater. So what would have to happen is this would have to have a retaining wall, then fill brought in order to get the separation necessary for septic and drainage. And the more I hear about, I know that store, I know the store, and I know the bathroom they have. It's a one-seater with a sink. And what we're talking about doing here is adding an outdoor retail store with no bathroom for the employee. So we haven't talked about whether that wine store is going to be heated. Is it going to have electric heat? All of that. And yet the employee in that building has no facility, which I don't even know if that meets OSHA requirements. But so let's say the person in the wine store is going to use that bathroom in the general store. And now we're talking about on-site consumption of wine and beer, which we all know what that does to people. They have to pee frequently. Now we're going to have people gathering there, consuming wine and beer, and the only facility they have access to is that one little bathroom in the general store. So to me, it is starting to morph. And I wouldn't be surprised if it's because the applicants have to pay a lot of money if they want to buy this place. But I don't want us to be in the position of trying to make the numbers work. I'm starting to feel that the site just can't handle a lot more people using that one bathroom. We got a school, we have the spring school right there. So I don't know, and we've also got all the HPOD requirements for separation of leaching rings, 4 feet of separation between leaching rings and top of groundwater for this new system. I don't know. I'm starting to think, and that area of Accabonac Harbor has some significant water quality problems. And the school just used some of the grant money to redo the entire school septic system because they determined that it was leaching into that pond there, and that pond is connected to the harbor. So the school just spent a lot of money redoing their septic system, and that creek runs right by the general store into the harbor. So I guess I'm starting to feel like it's overload. That's where I'm at right now.
Thank you, Randy. Michael?
Yep.
So on the image, the satellite image on Marco's presentation has 2 or 3 cars. And that looks like a winter scene to me. If you go to Google Maps and look at their satellite, there are, I count 25 cars. And there is no Sunday jazz in these photos. So what's going to happen when we get Sunday jazz and a bottle of wine, and as Lou was talking about, you don't need a seat. And if I was going to go to jazz, in my car, I got a nice little lawn blanket and lay out there. And also, these cars are going to stay here a lot longer now, right? The general store is, I go in and get my sandwich or get my coffee. Like, for example, I mean, I live in Wainscott, but there's a great little oil change shop up the street. So I drop my car off and I walk past the school and I sit on the porch and I get my coffee and I wait for my car to get done. And then I'm gone, right? But now you're going to have, you have 13 cars you propose 13 parking spaces. Boy, it's going to be a sea change with Sunday jazz and a bottle of wine. That's my concern about this.
Anything else?
No, thank you.
Okay, Ian, go ahead.
Yeah, I agree with a lot of the, I mean, I guess there've been a lot of comments, but I agree with many of them. First of all, I think the ADA is an important issue, and it's tricky with a historical structure like this. I think Randy brought up a great point. I'm also almost positive the town owns a facade easement on this, which we'd have to consider. Do you know if that's true? A facade easement? I think they purchased a facade easement.
Real estate transaction. I didn't handle a real estate transaction, but I quickly looked at the title report and I didn't see one. If there's one, it either exists or it doesn't. Maybe it wasn't recorded.
I'm pretty sure it does.
Someone should be able to produce it.
Fairly recent, so I don't want to put you in a position where we're saying one thing that would then conflict with that. So I understand.
It's either recorded in the county clerk's office or it's not.
Yeah.
So if somebody in the planning department has a copy of that, they should produce it.
Of course. I'm only saying that because everything else I say, I want to acknowledge that if that exists, I don't want to be pulling you in two different directions. You have to meet this and you have to meet what we're saying, which conflicts with that. ARB, the historical structure, I understand all of that. But I think Randy's 100% right that we should refer this to the ADA committee. And I think that's been really a matter of policy and frankly, only an oversight if we don't do it. So, it's only a committee that advises us, but I think we do have to hear from them.
So someone in the planning department will affirmatively refer that.
Yeah. Oh, I think we as a board,
Perfect.
Yeah. Not your responsibility, but I just want to put it out there on the table that I think we would like to hear from them to weigh their opinion as well as all these other factors. I agree with other board members that I think that the parking space, regardless of what other people say, I think it almost has to be in the front. We've been in a position before where if people feel unwelcomed, it's I appreciate the balance between the structure, the historical structure, all those things and trying to make it work. But we do want to make sure that anybody who visits feels welcome. And I think that a parking space up front that is clear is very, very important. As far as where the entrance goes for ADA, I do think the starting point would be the front. I understand the difficulties and we'll see how that all plays out. And I'm open-minded. But I think that is the place we start always. And for what it's worth, ADA is really a matter of law. It's not our discretion. Usually if the fire marshal has said that 60% rule doesn't apply to existing structures, the law is the law. And so if we have some discretion there, I think we'll use it as wisely as we can to make it work for everybody. But that I think is an important issue. I also want to say that I think that we're talking about, our decision here will be in perpetuity. So everything I say is not directed just at you, but, the use of the property in any future order. So if we talk about Sunday jazz and the right kind of jazz or wine, but not hard liquor, I have my own musical tastes and whatever other tastes, but I think we have to make sure that the approval holds for what any future owner would want to do. And I think Lou brought up a point, which was when we saw the pre-submission here, our understanding was that it was a retail store. I do think that live music, on-site consumption really does change the project.
I don't want to interrupt you, but I'm really concerned that this is taking a turn that is totally contrary to what is contemplated right here. And but if you guys want to say no live music, that's fine, because I certainly don't want to have the tail wagging the dog. That's so far away. We're not trying to make this an event space. We're trying to make it a space for the retail sale of not of spirits, of wine. If you want to say can be no music there, that's fine. I don't want any concern. This is what I was concerned about, is that I was going to be tarred with a brush that we wanted to stay 100 miles from. So if you want to prohibit the music, despite the fact that the prior owner said that there was guitar music there and always had been, if you want to prohibit that, that's fine. I don't want the tail wagging the dog, number one. And in terms of what Randy said about people having to create income because they've over leveraged themselves. This is a dream that has been put together by 4 people, 2 of whom have roots via my family dating back to colonial times, the Bennetts. So the ability for the Bennetts to be able to come in and to own the Springs General Store, and please, this is very, very important for you to hear. I don't want to be tarred with some strange brush that this is going to be some sort of party store or anything like that. If you want to put any sort of limitations on this that is going to prevent some of the evils that I'm hearing, then fine. And Randy, I have to be very specific to you. There's no mortgage. There's no financing on this. This is people have put together, are trying to put together through the hard work that they've made in other establishments, to put together cash for them with the help of some other people. Put together. This closing is going to happen. No financing whatsoever. This is not going to be something where we have to push and suck the blood out of a place to make sure that the investment worked. Furthest thing from the truth. This is really as much as anything sort of a dream project, and I don't know. It's hard for me to explain it to you guys in any other way. We're really, Daniel's one of my sons. One of my 5 kids. He's my oldest boy. He and my second oldest boy are 2 of the 4 partners. They live half the time in Springs, half the time in New York. They grew up in Southampton, but then moved to Springs. They're local folks. There's no attempt to denigrate this area. It's part of the huge sense of place of Springs that they don't want to alter. So if you want to put, as I said before, Lou, when you were talking about this unwanted things happening there, if we want to talk about conditions that will prohibit that, I just threw out one: no live music. Fine. This is not what we're about. We want to take this place that's starting that has become a significant, community center, and just make it better and more welcoming. That's all.
Yeah, well, I have no tar, I have no brush, and I intend. I mean, I'm trying to treat you fairly and kindly, and if I said anything to make you feel otherwise,
no. But one of the things that you can't do is suggest that we're going to do some things that are illegal. No.
Respectfully, sir, and let me speak, because I gave you a chance.
You did, and I thank you.
I'm not saying that.
Okay.
But as I think you're familiar with the planning process, and we're a planning board.
Very so. I used to be the planning council.
I wanted to very clearly say that whatever we decide here is in perpetuity.
Absolutely.
There's no judgment on you. And so we do have to be a little nuanced and put a fine point on what restrictions might be in place. And so just put whatever restriction you want. We'll have to talk about that. I'm not doubting your intentions. I'm not doubting the place or anything. I just think we have to be careful and thoughtful about it. So I'm bringing up issues that I think are planning issues that we'll discuss. There's nothing about finance in my comments.
It was mentioned.
I understand, but the way this works is we go around the board and we talk. So I'm not putting intentions in your words. Don't put anything in my words that I'm.
Those weren't directed to you. Those were directed to Randy.
It was a comment that was made, and I understand you're taking the opportunity now to raise it.
That's exactly
which, by the by, we would have given you at the end of our conversation, which we're still in the midst of. So
but when we say things like residency chef, that's what does that mean? I don't know. I think we have to explore that a little bit. A takeout food store with a retail wine store is different than some of the things that might be possible with some of the things that have come to light. Now, again, I'm not doubting your intentions or saying what you intend to do, but it is a different thing to have a retail wine store where people come and buy organic wine, or I don't care if it's spirits, frankly. I'm not judgmental about any of this stuff. I just think that we have to have a plan in place that is acceptable by town standards. So if it's different to buy wine and leave the site, or to buy wine and consume it on site. And that was not part of the original proposal. So now we have to consider what it means that it is now. And again, I'm not doubting your intentions here, but it came to light not through your original application, but through the SLA application. And we're just trying to sync the two things up. And I get how it works with SLA lawyers and these processes. That's the point of the process, is so that we can sort of uncover what the project is, unexpected problems or benefits or whatever they are, so that we put the best plan in place to come up with a good decision here. But I do think, and I would defer to the planning department here, what it means if there's on-site consumption. A chef to me sounds different than a takeout store. I know the town allows 16 seats, but I don't know that what the health department implications or the parking implications are. I think Michael brought up a good point about it's different if it's a takeout food store or a place where you're going to stay for a while. A restaurant is different than retail, for example.
Absolutely.
I'm not saying you're proposing a restaurant, and I know historically the use of the site might not be compliant with what is permitted there, as others have alluded to. But now that you're before us, we just have to consider these things.
Absolutely.
And so I mean all this very, very respectfully. There's no judgment on anything here. It's just we have to talk about the issues, and I'm open-minded about them. As far as the fence goes, I think that was my suggestion, and admittedly, I have a lot of bad ones. I'm not sure if this was a good one or bad one. I think it seems to have taken hold a little bit, and great if it was a good idea. I'm happy to stumble upon them. If you're already proposing a septic system that is going to, an IR system that's going to need a NRSP, I'm not sure why you wouldn't just wrap the fence into it as opposed to reducing it. But, I'll give you a chance to respond when I'm done. It seems to me that if you already have to go through that process, I would agree with you that if, you can eliminate 5 feet of fence and eliminate application, but I also think we got to be practical about this. If you're going through the process anyway, then perhaps we should have the best entrance and exit possible and not just, arbitrarily say, oh, we're going to take this out because it's more of a process when really it might not be. And I'm open-minded about that as well. I think the drainage is important, and it sounds like you're willing to do it. So I remain very open-minded about the project. Frankly, I'm not opposed to a place where people buy wine and, have some outside in a beautiful setting. We just have to make sure the site is appropriate for it. And the parking calculations we're talking about are based on retail. Mm-hmm. And it was, one employee, and it sounds like it could be a little different. Whether you intend it to be or whatever approval we may issue could then be used by a future applicant or a future owner rather, to be used in a different way. And so, look, I think it's a great place. I live in Springs. I'm a neighbor. No judgment about what kind of jazz you like or whether it's other kind of music. You'll have to comply with the town, noise standards for sure. And I think you intend to. I don't have any judgment about what kind of liquor or non-liquor or soda or whatever you want to drink. It's just making sure that the site can contain, and we plan well around it. So just to summarize, I think that we definitely have to refer to this to ADA. I think that's a very important issue. And I think that my advice to you, and this is only one person, would be that we figure out from a planning standpoint where that AD entrance should be before you go to the ARB. Because I would hate for the ARB to tell you something and then you come back to us and we say, oh, not that, this, then you got to go back to them. So I don't want to ping pong you around. However, I leave that up to you. Like the others, I thank you for the septic upgrade. I think that's important. But while you're doing that, I think it makes sense to roll all these other things into the fence, for example, the drainage, anything else that might come before ZBA jurisdiction, just so you don't have to go through that process again. And, as I think public comment is going to be important here. So, whatever we say now can be influenced by what the public says later. And I think it behooves everybody to get all the issues out on the table, discuss them thoroughly, and come up with a good plan. So We'll be here again, and we'll talk again. And again, I want to reiterate everything I'm saying, and I think everybody else is said respectfully and in the interest of good planning and not doubting your intentions or anything else.
Thank you, Ian. I'm going to associate myself with everything that every board member has said thus far. But I'll particularly, I'll join with Ian and Randy. I think the ADA committee's input for the purposes of planning is probably more valuable, and in terms of your the way in which you'll structure your work before the board's probably more useful for you to hear. To have us hear from the ADA committee before you might go to the ARB, because I'm not married to any particular access. Front entrance access is probably the best, but I want to hear what the ADA committee says on that score. Also, I know the store, we all know the store. You go in the side entrance and there may be difficulties maneuvering around inside if you come in through the side. But again, I don't want to hear from them. As far as the septic issue and the drainage issue, those are things that are going to be for your benefit in the long run. And I would expect that you would want, I appreciate very much the septic that you're going to be putting in the new septic system. It isn't required, but I think it's a great thing. But again, I think it's for the benefit of the store. And so that along with the parking area drainage issue, there's things that you'll do that will be of benefit to you. The big question is really the fact that what was presented and what continues to be presented is a new thing, the wine shop in the front. And the question is, what's the impact of the wine shop in the former shed? It's one thing if it's a wine shop where people pull in, buy a bottle, and go off on their way. It's another thing if the business is being structured around the idea of buy a bottle and sit down and drink it. I'm not saying that's bad at all. I think it's a fine idea if it can be done within the context of the zoning laws and within and as a matter of good planning. You're adding the on-premises beer and cider, which I wouldn't be surprised to learn occurs already. So maybe there's a bout of reality in that, and that's fine. But you're adding the element of on-premises wine. So it's just a greater, more active critical mass that you're presenting. I'm not saying it can't be done, but I'm just saying that we all recognize, and I think you recognize as well, that this greater use it has implications, planning implications involving parking, and implications involving impact on the community, and these are things that need to be addressed. As far as music is concerned, I think that it can be addressed. I don't think you need to necessarily eliminate all. I know that right now I think it's on Sunday nights, well, pre-COVID it was, people would gather on the steps and play guitar and but it was a Sunday 5 o'clock in the evening kind of thing. I'd also like to know about the hours, when you plan on doing things, because I don't imagine you're going to be doing things 12 months in the year. I don't know, in the long run, if it's profitable to do everything that you have in mind 12 months a year. But again, those are business decisions. You'll make them. And we just need to know what you have in mind so that we can fashion covenants as needed. We can, if that's the way we go. I guess the most important thing, and I know you know this, is that it's a process that we're involved in right now, and we're trying to facilitate what you have in mind and what your intentions are within, as we say, the interests of good planning. Before I know you want to speak a little bit more, I want to give Lou a chance to just wrap up.
Yeah, I just wanted to, because I think when I spoke and you and I had an interaction, I think we left off on a very agreeable mood. I think both of us were willing to do everything that was necessary to make each other happy. And somehow it got hot and heated going around. So I just wanted to get back to it because you and I did leave it off in a sort of amorphous manner that we agreed to work it out. And the concern that I had, you felt that it could be addressed, but we didn't get into any specifics. And that concern is the number of people that will congregate on site, whether they're sitting or standing. And, Randy did make a good point about, the one bathroom and, that kind of thing. And if you have a lot of people, it's a strain on the system, and that strain could lead to some pollution in a very, very important water body. So just a couple of more points. I know you got a little bit angry there and maybe took offense, but I just want to explain one thing, that these comments that we make are not specifically directed at you or what you're doing with this.
I'm aware of that.
When I was in business, we used a term called, whenever we wanted to enter into an agreement with another party, there was something that you always had to be wary of, which was deal creep. I've also heard it called mission creep. And I noticed that there have been applications in front of us that, I could label as application creep, because I'm not going to mention names, but I know one location in Montauk that started out as a dry retail goods store. It then got converted to an ice cream takeout place, and then it got converted to a restaurant, bar, and almost a nightclub. And at each phase, it became harder to deny them because of what they were previously. So they just inched themselves up, on a stage-by-stage basis. Also, there's another location which, used to be a takeout place where people would go there, take out the food, no bathroom use, whatever. And now it's a four-star restaurant where it's crowded all the time. So that's what we're addressing. We're not addressing these things specifically to you and what you want to do. So anyway, getting back to, and also the other point I wanted to make, it's not so much the music that is a problem, because you immediately said that you would get rid of the music. It's what the music brings with it, and which is the problem that I just mentioned before, which is the mass of people congregating there, as opposed to somebody walking into the store, buying something and going home. So, whether it's jazz or whether it's Iron Maiden playing, there's a difference, but, we know it's not going to be Iron Maiden. What we're afraid of is that the music is going to bring a lot more people and using the bathroom and so forth. So anyway, I wanted to make those points, and I want to end again on those mutually agreeable terms and mood that we had left off originally.
I agree.
So I think we can work something out. I think the way I think it should go is by agreeing to some sort of covenant that makes us feel comfortable and gives you what you want.
I agree. And what would be very helpful for me is if the board could think about the type of restrictions that they would like to see to prohibit what
I have one question. Sorry, just maybe for the planning department, but if the application now is including this on-site consumption, does that change the way do we need another bathroom, I guess is my question. Like, if you're not going to have all these people, is one bathroom really, I think Randy brings up a good point there. And does that change the way we have to plan this out?
Can I respond to all of that in the following? One of the things where you will find all these places that have morphed into places that become very problematic, not only for the community, but the surrounding community, but the town, is where their certificates of occupancy all had some sort of restaurant or bar use. Every one of those examples. That can't happen here. It's a retail store. From a health department point of view, you can only have 16 seats of single service use. That means that it's, disposable plates. The whole idea is to minimize the amount of gray water. This cannot morph into some of these nightmares that I, as an East End resident, don't want to see. They don't necessarily bring money into the community, and forgive me for saying this, typically they're outside operators that couldn't give a hoot in hell about the community and just there to sell booze and make as much money as possible. That's absolutely not what we're talking about. So we're talking about that sort of stuff can happen where you have we've already talked about hours of operations stopping at 9 o'clock. The people that you see at those restaurants and those establishments don't even think about getting dressed to go out until 9:30, 10 o'clock. This is so far away. I would really like to be able to finish my presentation without interruption.
Please. A member has a question, and it may inform what you're saying.
Okay, very good. I'm sorry.
Sharon, did you want to follow up?
Well, I mean, I don't think that I'm suggesting that there's going to be 50, 60 people. My suggestion is that, just from experience of bathroom use in general, 20 people sitting there for 2 hours drinking wine, and it may be only at 8 o'clock in the evening. It's just, that's the only thing. It was just a question to the planning department whether that was something that should be considered or not. But I'm not saying that there's going to be 100 people there. It's even if there's 20 people there, that could be a consideration.
I'm just thinking of my own personal experience, and without getting too personal, 20 people who sit there, or 30 people in the morning drinking coffee, probably has as much of a demand.
Well, but actually, it's a different thing. It really that points up the issue here. People come in the morning, get a cup of coffee, and take off and go to work. Well, that's not what you're suggesting here.
Not on the weekend.
Well, okay.
I think that the planning department can take a look at.
Yeah, I think it's a good idea. Let's find, because I do think Randy raised a good point with regard to the bathroom, and Sharon is echoing it, and I think it is a valid point. If the use, and this is particularly because you're making an application for on-site consumption. And if you're making an application for on-site consumption, then there has to be at least a thought given by the planning department as to the results, if you will, of on-site consumption, and whether a single toilet is satisfactory or sufficient for those needs. Now, there are, as you very well know, there are Suffolk County Department of Health regulations. There's town code regulations. Somewhere amidst all that law is going to be the proper answer to the question of, will one toilet be satisfactory if there is to be on-site consumption?
Yeah, and I don't see the toilet as an issue for the one employee in the retail store.
That's a separate thing. I'll grant you that. Look, that's going to be an issue for how you operate and how you staff your business. Or how the applicant staffs its business.
But one thing I would like the board to think about very seriously, because we want this as an opportunity. Look, the existing operator is obviously decided to move on based upon some obviously economic consideration. The existing owner is selling. We'd like this to be maintained as a significant community center. We'd like to have some new blood into it, some youthful blood put into it. Certain things come with that. We're being very environmentally conscious. Not only do we have the IA system going in, but there's a part of a Cornell Cooperative Extension water monitoring plan going on. So we're trying to be extremely environmentally conscious. We certainly don't want this to become anything other than something that's welcome for the community. Our attempt is to make certain changes, but certainly not changes that are going to have any sort of a deleterious effect on the community. So if the board can think about conditions that they would want to put on the property that would bind this operator or any future operator, I'm more than happy to hear those things. This is certainly not an attempt to make this other than the welcoming, central, significant part of the community that it has been, and we hope to continue it that way. We do not want to morph it into something that's different or gonna have a negative effect.
I'll say this, and we do need to wrap. This board takes at your word the representations that you make. And we anticipate that as we go through the process, their covenants will be developed that will reflect that. There's a reason why this board has just spent an hour and a half on one single retail application. And that is because we all recognize the significance of the Springs General Store to this entire town, not just Springs community. I live in Waynescott, and I love going to the Springs General Store. So
I think everybody does.
Yeah. I mean, when the kids were little, it's like, let's go to, we drive over to Springs. But
you've got one of them as a kid who's been going there forever.
No. So I want you to understand that the seriousness with which you take this application, this board, and that we take all applications seriously, but I shouldn't say the word serious, the significance of the board of the Springs General Store to this town is not lost on us.
I understand. And to the extent there was any ire, I want to explain myself. It's very difficult as someone who's been a land use practitioner, both sitting representing a board like this and appearing before a board, is when suggestions are made that something's going to change into something that is far from the intention.
Okay, but you understand that this is what we're charged with looking for or avoiding is, changes that are not anticipated that by a future owner, perhaps.
Fair enough.
So.
Fair enough.
Can I say one thing? I know it's been a long conversation, but you were asking what kind of restrictions we might ask for, and I'm all for trying to get to the finish line as thoroughly as possible, as quickly as possible.
Thank you.
So I'll just say that the concern often on this board is not how many seats there are, it's how many people a space can absorb, and that's people standing. So one of the suggestions we've made in the past is that we'd restrict, beverage service and consumption and food service and consumption to the seats. That's never been well received. I'm only throwing it out there because that would be something that would accomplish, that goal. I'm not saying that's what I'm proposing.
No, that maybe in a restricted area.
Yeah. I'm just throwing it out there for food for thought. That's all.
Very helpful. Thank you.
Thank you
That's
very much.
That's not very helpful.
No, that's fine. I'm just going to run through the questions, but I think we've answered all of them already. If any board member has anything they want to add on this, should the applicant submit additional information regarding the use and operations of the second retail use as detailed above? I think we'd all agree that that's necessary. Should the applicant submit additional information regarding the improvements of the parking lot as described above? And again, I don't see anybody objecting to that. And I think the applicant is agreeable. Should the applicant revise the proposed site plan to include ADA accessible parking spaces and entrances? And I just want to make sure that the board is all on board with the suggestion that we refer the matter to the ADA committee.
Yes,
Anybody
definitely.
have any issue with that?
No issue.
Surprised if anyone said.
So we won't make any changes
No,
on that.
I think that look, it's been pointed out that we are the bottom line when it comes to ADA. Well, that's a bit grandiose, but in terms of the planning process, it's in our jurisdiction. So let us refer to the ADA committee and see what they have in mind, and that will inform our position going forward. Again, if you want to talk to the ARB informally, I guess you can do that. But the better at this juncture, the better step would be to let us do what we do with the ADA committee. And you have one last thing, and then
I just have a question about the
go right ahead.
Committee. So you guys will refer
we
that
reach
to
out.
them,
We'll reach out to. Let me make sure from Eric. We reach out to the ADA committee.
Yeah, we'll do it. Okay, excellent.
And I guess if they need your input, the ADA committee will contact the applicant, or they'll contact you to contact the applicant.
Figure it out.
Okay,
I'll talk to the client.
that's a perfect answer.
Of course.
We'll let you know.
I just wanted to make sure that it was clear that we provided the information that we did just to start this discussion.
Well, listen, I would expect that if the ADA has questions or needs something clarified, or if they have an issue with something you wrote, you'll know about it quick enough.
Oh, and the other thing I did, my
Last thing, Mr. Bennett.
my apologies was one of the reasons I want to move that fence out of the required setback is because the town was very helpful in saying that as it relates to natural resources, special permits for an IA system, there's been in effect a de facto fast tracking. So if they were just going there for that was the reason why. I just don't want to get because it was a good question, but and I wanted to.
Right. No, there's a lot of moving parts, and I know you'll be in the car going home going, I meant to mention this. So I'm very familiar with that. So thank you very much for being here and this depth of participation. Thank you. No, like I said, it's an important application. All right, next we have the American Tower at 103 Flaggy Hole Road, better known as the Girl Scout Camp.
Camp Blu-ray.
What?
Camp
Blue Bay. Yeah, I'm sorry.
Blue Bay.
Blue Bay.
Blue Bay?
Not Blue Bell.
It's a Blue Ray, Blue Bay.
Not Blue. We have, I see, sorry, I don't know you. Welcome. Hi, how are you?
Ray.
You're just
Alec Glad from Cuddy and Fader. We're the Land Use Council.
very well. Thank you. Okay, well, I guess you saw the process. Mr. Shantz will go first, and then you'll have an opportunity to speak. I think I saw Mr. Schnell. There he is. Okay. And then Ian is the board, the person will speak, but you'll come after the planning department. So Eric, take it away.
Sure. And looks like you can actually see the tower elevation. So this is an application for new personal wireless service facility. Basically made to consist of an 185-foot tall monopole and a roughly 5,000 square foot fenced in leased equipment compound area. The monopole would replace an existing 60-foot tall monopole built by Verizon. However, the new monopole is designed to accommodate equipment for the town's emergency services, communications upgrades, as well as the 4 major cell phone carriers. The parcel itself, which I will try to call up for you as I go through this. But the parcel itself is over 172 acres. It's zoned A5 residence and is situated in northwestern Springs. As the title of the application, as the chairman said, this is the site of Camp Blue Bay, the Girl Scouts of America. It's mostly surrounded by residential property. However, sorry about this. I'm just trying to get you a visual that makes sense here. Okay, here we go. So it's mostly surrounded by residential property. However, there is a small area of NB zoning to the southeast. And hopefully, yep, now you can see the property and where it's situated in Springs. So pursuant to Secret and Chapter 128 of the Town Code, this is an unlisted action. We recommend that the board declare lead agency, that being the planning board. The planning board should note that the existing facility, which again is a 60-foot tall monopole that was originally applied for in the early 2000s, approved in 2010, was also an unlisted action. It was given a negative declaration. There was never a positive declaration made for that application. There was no environmental impact statement required. Again, that's at this location. However, we would feel remiss without mentioning the fact that the board did recently deem a tower, a facility of basically the same design, which is 185-foot tall monopole. There was an application at a site just to the east of here that was given a positive declaration under SECRA. That was a type 1 action, first of all. And then second, the reasons really for the main reasons, there were 4 of them, for that positive declaration were the potential impacts on aesthetic resources. That site was visible from numerous scenic areas of statewide significance. Its potential impacts on historic resources. It's right near the Springs Historic District and the Pollock Krasner House. Its impact on human health, which specifically in this case relates to fall zone setback requirements. As the board knows, you can't have a property line within 1 times the height of the tower, that being horizontal distance, or 2, and you can't have a habitable structure or area where people congregate within 2 times the height. This other application required 30 variances from those fall zone setback requirements, 24 of them due to surrounding residences. And then also consistency with community character was brought up. That site being, as it might be suggested by the 24 variances from adjacent houses, is in the middle of a residential neighborhood. In the case of the subject application, really none of those situations are present. The Springs Historic District is a considerable distance away from this site, and I can probably show you that here. You will now see it in red over by Accabonac Harbor in the lower part of the screen. That's the Springs Historic District. It is not within a scenic area of statewide significance. It can be seen from one, though, and we'll discuss that a little bit later when we get into the visual analysis. But basically, the situations that existed at that other site are not present at this. As they say, location, location, location. You can clearly see as you're looking at an aerial view of the hamlet of Springs, this is the largest, mostly undisturbed tract of woodland there. It's the site that is the easiest to have a concealed personal wireless facility in the form of a macro installation or a tall tower, a tall mount. So given the location, the screening, none of those other situations are present. We don't feel, at the time of initial review, that this application requires a positive declaration. We would, I'll say we feel remiss in not mentioning that there was a very similar application, at least in terms of the design of the facility, at another location that was POSDEC. However, the key difference here being the location. So as part of this project, the monopole has been designed not only to carry to have the 4 major cell carriers on it, it's also intended to be an important aspect of the town's emergency services communications upgrade. As you look at that elevation of the tower, those black circles you see are dishes. Those are both for the town. Additionally, the top equipment arm mounts you see there are for the town. The subsequent 4 sectors or areas of arm mounts that you see protruding, those are hypothetical installations for future wireless carriers. However, we do have the East Hampton Police Department's communication technician here this evening. And any questions you have about the need for this facility as part of the communications upgrade, the design, coverage needs, things of that sort, I will defer to Mr. Schnell with regard to those. The special permit standards for a wireless facility, I have attached them to the memorandum. However, in the memorandum, I broke down some of the more pertinent ones. One of the things the board is aware of is that when you look at a site, the code directs you to consider a list of opportunity sites, which is areas where we want facilities, and the list of avoidance areas where, obviously the opposite, we don't want them. This meets one of the criteria as an opportunity site, as it's within tree masses. As far as avoidance areas goes, it's not quite as cut and dry. There's a list of 5 of them. One is open spaces, that is preserved designated recreational open space. This is not. It is not CPF. It is not a nature preserve. The second is areas attendant to water bodies or shorelines. There are a number of scenic areas of statewide significance in the immediate area. I will take off the layer of the historic district and then show you the boundaries of the surrounding scenic areas of statewide significance. As you might suspect, they're close to the shorelines and harbors. You can see them in the yellow hashing there. But obviously the location, which, well, I don't think you'll really be able to see my cursor here on the screen, kind of wiggling in there. That's the rough location where the new tower is proposed. It's roughly 30 feet away from where the existing 60-foot tower is. So it's not within a scenic area of statewide significance. However, as always, with a tall mount, you should consider the visibility from those areas of this proposed facility. The other avoidance area criteria, flood-prone areas. This is not a flood-prone area. Historic and cultural resources. The property does at its basically its southern corner there. You can see it's, it's basically rectangular, but if you look at that very bottom part by Washington Avenue there near Fort Pond Boulevard, that contains the Edwards Cemetery. This is actually quite interesting. I won't go through the whole story, but this property used to be property of the Edwards family many years ago. For centuries, it was actually pasture land and their farm. And in fact, actually, you can see an anomaly if you look at the aerial there. Notice how there's all evergreen plants on the bottom portion of this lot in a rectangular fashion. It looks like there's sort of 2 squares dropped in there. That's actually successional growth, as you would call it. And as I take off the current aerial, I'll show you what the property looked like in 1962. And this is pertinent to the application as well, because the tower is proposed to be located in this area. You can now see in the 1962 aerial, that whole area was a wide open field And then what happened is, as that was left fallow, that grew in, mostly with cedars. But basically right in the southern corner of this property is the Edwards Cemetery. It is a historic site. It's not a designated historic landmark. I suspect, given the density of the existing vegetation, and I'll switch back to the current aerial, it's very tough to see on the aerial. In fact, if I zoom in way close, you can, okay, now you can kind of see that little square. See that right in the corner? That's the fence around the Edwards Cemetery. And then, as we zone out to the rest of the property, you can see that. So it is a historic resource. It's not a designated landmark. The location of the tower, which is roughly 550 feet away from the cemetery, and then both areas are within this dense evergreen vegetation. I don't think it will be visible. I don't think that counts as this being a site, a historic site. But I just wanted to mention that because that is a resource.
Could you put your cursor on this tight shot about where the tower is going to go? If you can. I know it's you're estimating.
That's all right.
I'm aware of that.
I can probably do you one better while leaving the aerial up and still yakking away. But
okay, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to
that's fine.
break your flow up, but
that's fine.
Break up your flow.
Because I have an aerial that was attached to the memorandum. Nope, all the way back. That's right. Okay, this will show you, I think, what you want. So if we look at the bottom picture here, which I will try to get to.
Can you see it too?
That's I saw it in a picture. I wanted for the vast television viewing audience.
Well, that says, conspicuous as I could make it. That's actually a little bit off of where the site is. If you look right below that circle, you can see that there's a little area clearing, what looks like a little building there. That's the equipment compound and the existing tower. So this is basically a stone's throw away. It's literally, I think, 30 or 34 feet away.
Okay.
And then obviously to the south, 550 feet away through those evergreens is the Edwards Cemetery. So then other than that, again, bringing up the scenic areas of statewide significance, this is not within any of those areas. And then, obviously, as you could see when I had the map zoomed out further, it's a significant distance from the nearest SAS, or scenic area of statewide significance. The closest one is, in fact, the 3 Mile Harbor subunit, which actually does traverse the first few hundred feet of this property. However, again, the distance we're talking here from the boundary of that to the site where they're proposing the tower is about 2,000 feet away. So we're talking, almost a half a mile, simply because this site is so large. So that's your opportunity site and avoidance area criteria. Going through some of the other applicable special permit standards, there's siting standards. In other words, on an individual property where you would locate the tower. It says placement within trees should be encouraged, but no antennas should extend higher than 10 feet above the average tree height. The average tree height in this area is about 60 feet. Obviously, a 185-foot tall tower is going to be above that and not meet that standard. That is a directory advisory standard, not mandatory. This application does not require a variance as a result of that, but we need to tell you that because that is a standard. With regard to the color of the tower, this is a special permit standard, but the planning board in the past has deferred that to the ARB, and I'm sure that they'll be fine with doing that. Just in terms of what color to paint the tower and the equipment, it's a minor aspect and usually kind of a cleanup element. But this is also to remind you that the ARB is an involved agency under SECRA. So, eventually this application will be getting sent to them. They are, in fact, the only involved agency, as far as I can tell. I don't think this needs FAA approval or anything like that. It's too far away from the airport. Eddie Schnell from the police department may be able to clarify that a little bit, though, if I'm incorrect on that. And then the last special permit standard that I pointed out for you, I mentioned already with regard to the nearby facility and application, but was the fall zone and setback requirements. This does not require any variances from any of the fall zone requirements. The nearest residence is about 450 feet away from the site, which, just to help you out here, I'll show you. Which would be basically, you can see on the site here where the existing facility is roughly. It comes in off this Gallatin Lane access off 3 Mile Harbor, Hog Creek, access to the site. And then it's right there. Again, it's the new tower is proposed in roughly the same area, about 30 feet to the northeast. You can clearly see these are the 2 closest residents. The one more to the top of the screen is about 450 feet away. And then the nearest point of the property line to the facility is about 260, feet away from the 185-foot tall pole. So it meets both those setback requirements. What I want to do is go over to the visual assessment that was submitted by the applicants. And what I will do is start off with the key map. And I apologize for making everyone nauseous watching the screen. So anyway, this is the key map. What the applicants did is they brought a crane to the site and created visualizations based off of that, taking pictures and then going around the project site at various locations. You can see them right here. There's 30 of them in the surrounding area, and creating visualizations of what the facility would look like from different areas. So for the most part, the site is not visible either year-round or seasonally. Those are represented by the black dots that you see there. The orange ones are where it could be seen seasonally. So in other words, the winter months. And then the yellow, solid yellow, is where it is visible year-round. Now, you'll notice that a number of those sites are in scenic areas of statewide significance. It's starting at the left, if you look 29, that's the beginning of Sammy's Beach Road. Number 3 is Maidstone Park.
If you think we can read those numbers.
I'm sorry.
But we know where Sammy's Beach is, most of us.
I will be going to the pretty picture visualizations of them, so you'll get a nice shot of those locations. But the other 2 areas, of course, are over to the east in Accabonac, Gerard Point, and Louse Point. However, and then I should mention the other one is 10, which is right in front of the subject site. So what I'm going to do actually here is skip to their visualization for site 10. So this is basically what it would look like right from Hog Creek, right in front of the proposed tower. Obviously, it's highly visible. This is really the only location where the tower is this conspicuous, this visible. This is basically taken from the edge of the road. As you can see here, there is a little area of grass. Something to consider might be adding taller screening here that would cut down the line of sight, obviously evergreen screening from a motorist. But basically, this is sort of a gap in the existing vegetation near where the access road is. It's the area where the site would be most visible. But going back to Sammy's Beach Road, and Maidstone Park. So I guess I'll actually go in order here because Maidstone Park is first. So this is basically, if you've ever been to Maidstone Park, as you're coming down to the beach area past the baseball field, as you come down the hill and you start to turn onto the road that heads right to the end there, to the inlet of 3 Mile Harbor. Obviously, this is a visualization, but as you can see, due to the significant distance from the site, the top of the tower would be visible above the tree line, but it is certainly not as conspicuous as the last rendering. I'll show you 2 others just real quick, which are Gerard Drive. So this is, this is site 23 of Gerard Drive.
Is that the end of Gerard?
This is not quite the end. This is like halfway down Gerard Drive.
Okay.
This is the end of Gerard Drive, and you can see the railing there, and you can see the little arrow, and you can see the top of the tower over the, the horizon there. The one that you see on the left-hand side of the screen that appears closer, if you look, if you look at the fence post, the last fence post on the left, and draw your eyes up to the tree line, you'll see there's a little well, not little, but there's a 150-foot tall tower sticking up here. That is the other site that I had mentioned earlier that the planning board had an application for recently. So just to give you an idea there, it's much less visible, but that's simply because it's on the other side of Springs, so to speak. So
closer to Accabonac Harbor.
That's correct. Yep. The other site is
the other one.
The subject site is not.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
further away.
further out.
So and then this is also
Eric, just one thing. So the red arrow shows the location of the proposed tower, but it doesn't actually show us what the tower, the width, the diameter, and the antennas on it. So it's a little bit.
Well, you've got that other picture that he showed, the tight shot.
Yeah.
So if you want to get a sense of what it's going to look like.
Is that red arrow supposed to represent the top of the tower or
That's
what?
correct. That's correct. And it does show the tower design. It's just that it's obscured because it's so far off in the distance in this photo.
You click back to the picture of what the tower will look like from that tight shot that you had. There you go. There, Randy. There you go. That's what it'll look like.
Lovely.
Yes.
So, Eric, can we see a couple of the shots they're kind of in middle distance, not the ones that are tied up like this one, or 2 or 3 miles away like the Gerard Point?
Sure. Well, Sam tells me
16.
Well, you can run the cursor and say, this is the one I'm going to show you now.
All right, I'll show you visualizations for sites or location 16.
And tell us what street that is. So, yeah.
Sure, although I don't know until unless I go
something
back
close
to. Oh, well, there you go. The applicants did us the favor of.
There you go. Yeah, writing the name of the street, which I can't read, but.
Yeah. So again, their key map indicated you're not going to see much. You're not going to see anything here because as they indicated in the key map, the site is not visible from this location. But basically, this is the existing photo. And okay, I'm sorry. For this one, they didn't provide also the proposed because you can't see it. So it'd be the same photo.
Gonna get one with it in it that's mid-range because that's a good idea.
Okay. Well, actually, here's a good one. Here is Springs Tavern on Fort Pond Boulevard. So, well, what I'll do.
Oh, there it is. That's the orange arrow.
That's correct. Yep.
Okay.
Which this is partially visible year round. But yeah, so that would be the location there. And then you can see that, this rendering, because it's closer, maybe you can't because it's depending on how you're looking, but you can see that they have somewhat, you can see the dish at the top. You can see a little bit more of the details of the actual facility if I zoom in quite a bit.
Mm-hmm.
But so that's an area where it would be sort of partially visible, not as imposing as right underneath it on 3 Mile Harbor Road, and not, just a kind of a speck in the distance, which is what some of the other visualizations from Maidstone Park and Gerard and Louse Point seem to illustrate. So obviously, we won't go through all 30 visualizations right here today. The board should read the document, look at the pictures, think of other areas that they might feel visualizations are warranted and needed for, and give the applicant the correct direction for a subsequent submission. So I guess what I'll do now is I will switch to, I'll do that.
Want to turn it over to Eddie?
I will in a second. So anyway, I just want to go to the compound sketch, which I think is here. Yeah. All right, so there's a compound sketch. From what I could tell, the only emergency generator proposed here is the one for the town, which is propane, not diesel. So in other words, it can't leak. However, perhaps Eddie or the applicants can clarify that. as to whether or not there are other generators that are proposed now or that are anticipated in the future, whether or not this generator is adequate to serve the needs of the town and all the carriers. That's just one thing that should be clarified. Another issue is noise. There hasn't been information about noise from the emergency generator. Again, this is intended to be an emergency generator. It will not be running 24/7. Again, this site is quite isolated, nearly 500 feet away from the nearest residence in evergreen screening. But the board should discuss that with the applicants because, as a reminder, the applicants could not even apply for a variance from the Zoning Board of Appeals. They need to be in compliance with the noise standards at the residential property line. Other than that, there's a structural analysis and radio frequency engineers report, as well as coverage maps. I am going to defer to Eddie Snell from the East Hampton Police Department, the communications technician, as well as Cityscape, which is the town's wireless consultants. If you've been on the town's homepage, you'll see that they've been working on coverage maps, doing an inventory of service throughout the town. Our goal is to update the wireless master plan and the sections of the town code that relate to wireless. They've been working on that. They also review all incoming applications. They've reviewed this application. You should have a memorandum from them. It was also posted on the website for the public. And they are available via Zoom. And I see that Susan Raybold is in the Zoom room. She's here from Cityscape. I think what I'll do here is let Eddie speak right after me, and then we'll go to Susan. But again, on structural RF coverage issues, I'm going to defer to their expertise. Parking and access, they're proposing to use basically the exact same access in the exact same condition that it's in. We have no objection to that. In fact, we feel it's will have the least impact. So we support that. Landscaping and lighting, I mentioned briefly that you might want some evergreen screening along 3 Mile Harbor Road. When we were looking at that visualization of where the tower is most visible, they say they're not proposing any exterior lighting. If they don't need it, that's fine. If they are, we should look at it, and it needs to meet the code. The final thing I'll mention is that this is listed in the CPF plan as either for this property, the whole 172-acre property, as for public acquisition or to purchase development rights. There's no intention at this time. Well, there's intention by the town as it being on a CPF list, but there's no active engagement with the current property owner for a complete acquisition. So that's not something that's happening. However, whenever the board's considering putting a new wireless facility on a site that is so listed, you should make sure that the location and the improvements do not preclude proper future preservation of the parcel. Again, this is proposed in basically identically the same area where the existing facility is. To the periphery of the property, I don't see any potential for, circumventing the intentions of naming this property on the CPF plan. So basically, in conclusion, the application is incomplete. The board should discuss those issues and then also consider the statements and the reports from Cityscape and from the East Hampton Police Department. I guess in summation, I'll just say, the one thing is the facility, as you can see from the visualizations, is partially visible from some of the adjacent scenic areas of statewide significance. But again, and I will go back to the aerial and zoom out. Again, this is the largest wooded, mostly undisturbed, not open area, not a residential area, property in Springs. It presents the best opportunity to have a macro site, a tall cell mount, and provide not only emergency services coverage, but cell coverage to the residents of Springs. I was mentioning Cityscape's work. They did a poll of the town as to what their priorities are regarding coverage. And although, we, the planning department, the town as a whole, and the planning board always seek to minimize any impacts of a future wireless service facility, it was clear in the poll that there is a significant coverage gap in Springs, and that it is a significant desire of the community to have coverage in this area of town. So it does seem that this is probably the best opportunity to provide that coverage in the most minimally invasive way possible, just given the size and the nature of the site. But with that, I will defer to the other members of the review team here. And Eddie, don't know. Yeah,
There it is.
Yep.
Good evening. Thank you.
Eddie Snell with the police department. Guess I'll start off with generators. The town's proposing I believe 50 kW propane generator, so we don't have any spillage, leakage, whatever diesel problems. We do install level 2 sound enclosures on everything we do, just because I don't want to be standing next to it and have a non-sound attenuated enclosure because they're really loud. However, as it's a function of the police department, there is an exemption in the town code's noise requirements for anything. So we do fall under that. So we're not required.
How often do you run it?
It does a self-test for 30 minutes on Wednesdays, usually around 10 or 11 o'clock, depending on when the clocks change, AM, yep, and whenever the power goes out.
Well, yeah, that's what it's there for.
As far as American Tower, I believe they're planning on a generator. Were you? Yeah. They'll cover that more when they talk, but they, I believe, typically do diesels, but that's their problem, not mine, fortunately. I know there were some questions over email earlier about minimum heights. The driver for minimum height on this site is not for coverage, it's for point-to-point backhaul. So anything less than 185, and I got to go dust off my plans for the Crandall Norfolk Woodlands.
Okay.
So that's kind of where we are with the height.
Yeah, well, I guess, the fundamental question is, do you need it?
Yes.
Okay. So
easy answer.
I got to ask the easy ones and the hard ones. But also, what is the impact of this on other proposals? How much coverage does this give you?
Public safety coverage wise.
Oh yeah, that's your department.
Yeah, this is going to blanket Springs. Within Springs, we don't need, if this goes as proposed, we should not need another public safety tower for the foreseeable future.
All of Springs. This will. Okay. Does anyone else have questions for Eddie while we have him as a captive answerer?
I'll still be here because I got to wait around for the next one. Anyway.
Oh, okay, yeah, that's true. You do have, yeah. Sorry.
I have some, Sam.
All right, just one thing, Randy. Bear in mind the hour. Okay.
Bear what?
The hour. The hour.
Oh, the hour.
It's late.
Sam, are you? Never mind.
No.
So thank you, Eddie. And I think part of what.
Randy, I don't mean to be rude, but I just want to point out, because I don't know if you're going to go into all your comments, but I don't know. Did we want to hear from Cityscape? They're waiting on the line, or do you want? And then.
Well, I think Randy's. Your questions are directed to Eddie and to the necessity for emergency services, right? Because if you have other issues, why don't you hold off on that?
No. This is in the. Eddie said that. Well, first of all, Sam, I was interested in your question where Eddie said that they wouldn't need another tower for emergency services in Springs. Does that include there's two proposed towers right now at the chapel and at the fire department. You're saying that from an emergency communications perspective, those are not necessary for your use.
If this comes in, you're saying?
Yes.
Yes, if this is approved as submitted, the town does not require the fire district, and we've never considered the chapel.
Okay, thank you. So here's my, we'll talk about the diesel generator with the next person, but in the Cityscape report, and I'm on page 3, it says, I'm reading it now. It says, the applicant states that according to information they were given, the town's public safety communications needs dictate a tower height of at least 180 feet above ground, corresponding to the mounting height of the town's proposed topmost antenna array. Then it says, Cityscape cannot verify this fact since no propagation maps of the town public safety service areas were included in the application. So my question is, can we have those maps for Cityscape to have a look at to give us their opinion about the height?
So the coverage on the RF perspective for coverage, that's not what's driving the height. What drives the final height on this is point-to-point backhaul connections to the other towers.
I understand what you're saying, but are you saying that Cityscape is they're asking for propagation maps?
Yeah, so Cityscape's charged with telling us about cellular, not public safety. That's what I'm here for.
If I could interrupt here, this is Ben Evans at Cityscape. When I wrote this, I wasn't aware of what Eddie was just told us, that the driver of the height are the microwave backhauls. I was not aware of that fact.
Okay, thank you. So I understand. And so basically, the police department is asking the planning board to accept that in your view, that the tower has to be 185 feet plus a 15-foot antenna. And so I just want to probe that a little bit, because we did have another, anyway. So tell me what would happen if the tower was 150 feet from your perspective?
The town would be forced to go to different property and build their own tower, bypassing this board.
Yeah, you mean you'd want to go back to that Crandall?
That would be the last option we'd have.
And that's because if you don't have
185.
If you don't have 185 feet.
If you don't have 185 feet plus the natural elevation of this site, you can't see the other antenna.
Correct.
Or the other, right?
Website, correct.
So that's just because I see the one over on at the end of Cedar Street that the planning board approved at 185 feet, and it's way above the tree line. And this one is proposed to be, I think, 120 something feet above the tree line. And Long Island doesn't have that much elevation. I'm just wondering where is that tower that you're trying to connect with? That's the one the critical connection.
Well, one of them actually is the Northwest Brush Dump, as we refer to it, tower at 18 Old Northwest Road. There is a ridge line that extends between that tower and Springs, which is one of the drivers for the height. The other driver for height is the second link out. We're looking at Shelter Island at the moment, the tower that they have at their landfill. That one's less height intensive. And we also have a path to the water tower in Montauk was the other clean path. That one did need the additional height.
So it's just the one at the end of Cedar Street that you really, to get the line of sight.
Well, yeah, but so that one we have obviously free reign on, as it's on town property and part of the lease agreement. But the other links out can't really be, we can't sign a lease on because we don't know what's happening here. So
generally, I think this is the right site for a tower, but I think from the community emergency communications people's perspective, you guys are very concerned with the technology and the communication services. And we as the planning board have a broader, we're supposed to be looking at community character and aesthetics. So I think it's really important that you realize that if this tower can be any lower, from my perspective, it should be as low as you can stand it. And if you're telling me 185 is as low as you can stand it, then I'll accept that.
Yeah, that's as low as I can stand it, and my job is to keep police officers and firefighters safe.
Okay, thank you.
Well, thanks, Randy. Let's let Eddie. Does anyone else have any questions for Eddie Schnell? For Mr. Schnell. I'm sorry, Eddie. Anybody else? Eddie, do you have anything else for us?
Nope.
Okay. Eric, do you have anything else?
Not I.
Folks from Cityscape, did you want to? Do they need to add anything to the presentation? We'd like to give the applicant an opportunity to be heard on this and then get it to the board. So, okay, go right ahead, sir. Thank you.
Certainly, and I will be brief. Al Glad from Cuddy and Fader on behalf of the applicant, American Tower Corporation. So just to go back to some of the visibility stuff, this is being designed as a monopole. It's just galvanized steel gray color. It's meant to kind of blend in with the sky. And they're usually 5 feet at the base and they taper up to 18 inches at the top. So they are pretty slender to try to reduce that visibility. And also for the generator issue, ATC is planning to provide a single generator for all 4 carriers on the compound, as opposed to each carrier having their own individual generator. But I don't know about any sound attenuation, but I've made a note of that to try to follow up on that. And also just one more thing about the height. Having 185 feet in addition to the public safety aspect is it does allow all carriers in the market right now to locate on the same tower at one spot, so that you don't have to maybe build, a different carrier have to build a separate tower elsewhere in this area in order to provide that service. Because when you look at the RF coverage plots from all the carriers, there are significant gaps in this area that this one site will help remedy. So having that extra height allows 4 carriers to be located on the tower on sectors below that.
Let me just understand what you're saying. Are you saying, as Mrs. Chanel's just said, that 185 feet will allow emergency services to cover all of Springs? Can you say the same thing for the telephone service carriers?
I can only say what's in the report. So
they're not going to 185 because that's.
Oh yeah. So the first carrier is AT&T and they're at 150. Okay. So they provided coverage plots at 150 feet. And I'm sure if they went down, the coverage would be less, but I'm just making an assumption based on general experience. So that is the case. But the point I was trying to make is if you push the total height of the tower down, if a carrier goes so low to a point that they can't actually propagate and provide service, then they would have to locate elsewhere.
Right.
So the extra height for the public safety is actually an intrinsic benefit.
Yeah. What I was getting is how much commercial carrier, the telephone service carrier, does this provide? Is it as broad, literally?
Yeah. So I don't know if you want to go through any of the coverage plots, but there's existing coverage. Each provider provided existing coverage, and then what it will look like once the tower's online, that we can show you.
Yep, I'm going to try and get that for you.
Okay. I didn't mean to interrupt your flow again.
No. Those were just a few discrete points that I wanted to mention. And our goal tonight coming here was just to have this board circulate its intent to serve as secret lead agency.
All right.
Sam,
Eric, while you are bringing those up, I'll turn it over to Ian.
Okay.
Yeah, I think the answer is that there still are going to be gaps with the cell service, because I've looked at those maps, especially the lower you get. AT&T's 150 and it goes down from there. Well, first of all, I just want to say, cell towers are controversial. I think everybody knows in Springs in particular, and 185-foot towers. The one Randy referred to in the old brush dump, it's right next to property I own. I look at it every single day across the farm field. So I'm very familiar with it. But, I think public safety is important. The town is working hard, I think, to upgrade their system. And I certainly take Mr. Snell's word that this is essential to it. And I think there is no perfect spot for it. And I think this is going to be controversial. I don't think the idea that, we're going to put it here instead of someplace else where we've had, public outcry. I don't think this is going to be smooth and, unopposed. But I do think one of our jobs certainly is to look out for public safety. And I don't want to stand in the way of that. And so largely I support it. I think Randy brings up good points that we are also charged with aesthetics, community character, and all sorts of other things that we do have to consider. But I'll say right off the bat that I'm supportive. I do want to ask Eric a couple of questions. Because we did pause deck another tower in the area, which I did not vote for. I do worry sometimes about our consistent application of standards. Will you pull up that map again of all of Springs? And what I'm curious about is this site in relation to distance of scenic areas and historic areas versus the other. This isn't to challenge anybody. I just want to see it from myself. And
I can get you all that stuff. Just give me a couple of moments here. So what you'll see now in red, where you see it says Springs there, right by Accabonac Harbor, that's the...
we don't up yet. It's not up yet.
We're looking at Ed and Randy. And Sharon and
tricky
and us. Nancy.
Tricky thing about the Zoom, you got to press share screen. Here we go. Okay.
There you go.
So obviously the site is in that bluish turquoise, border there. The yellow hash mark you see are the scenic areas of statewide significance. Obviously, the 3 Mile Harbor subunit and the Accabonac Harbor subunit, Abraham's Landing down to the southeast there. So the obviously that very large parcel is the subject property. The other one that we were talking about is situated right here. Oops, clicked on the entire thing. I'm trying not to have to zoom out again for you.
That's Fort Pond.
Yeah, let me.
So what do you want to see?
Yeah, in historic areas, obviously there's the red area there. Is there another one, or that's the only one in Springs?
That's the only historic area. I mean, there are scattered landmarks. Most of them.
I guess the point, and I don't want to drag this out too long, but I do think it's important to say because I'm a little uncomfortable as a board that I just want to make sure that we apply standards consistently. And it seems like if we're talking about the visuals, the aesthetics, that the scenic areas would be the more important part of that. And this site actually seems closer to areas of scenic, and that's not even counting the actual ocean where this is going to be very, very visible. But it's actually closer, I think. And so if we're going to use that in a pause deck in one case, and then say in this case it's different, I'm not sure what we're basing that on, quite frankly. Now,
I will just say, keep in mind, because I was trying to make the distinction between the fact that, the subject parcel is actually partly within the scenic area of statewide significance. It covers the area along the shoreline on the western boundary there, but that's 2,000 feet away from the actual site of the tower. It's actually significantly further away.
And how close was the other one?
I can tell you when I zoom in.
And Eric, by the way, I don't mean to put you on a spot here. So if you don't have this,
that's what I'm here for.
You're very sharp, and I don't doubt you, but you don't have to do this.
It's quite all right. About 900 feet away.
Okay, so it is
2,000 versus 900.
Okay, so it is closer. My point still stands, which I think in my mind, and look, I want to say I'm only one vote. I happen to be the lead on this application, but my vote or opinion is no more important than anybody else's. So curious to hear what everybody else says. I think this is going to be This is going to have an impact on scenic areas, and I think the fact that from the ocean itself, I'm not sure how we treat that, if it's a scenic area or not, but it's significant. You know, people use the water recreationally, and we've used that standard on other towers to say it's going to get in the way. I think this is going to be impacted. Part of that is just to say that, geez, I hope that Cityscape and the town work out improving our code so that we can have something that makes sense and works with, what we're charged with here as a board. I do think there are some avoidance areas, and I got a question about that too, Eric. Woodland, it's not considered woodland.
No, it is. In fact, it's funny you just mentioned redoing the code, because there's numerous things in there that don't, when that code was crafted and starting in 1998, don't jive with the current modern world. But also there's some, what I think are typos in there, because and specifically that one, when you look at the list of opportunity sites and then the avoidance areas, it seems to be contradictory, because in opportunity sites, it says, please put them in trees.
I understand. Yeah.
And in avoidance areas, it says avoid woodlands.
Right.
So, but really, because it says, that's really the woodlands part in the avoidance area is a sub part of open spaces. But really what they were supposed to be writing in there, and if you read the rest of the code in the wireless master plan, they meant designated open spaces. They weren't clear on it.
But also in that G is farmland, and it says active agriculture, which is not designated open space. So there's other inconsistencies here too, which lead me to believe that wasn't the whatever. I don't want to stand here and just like make these points. I just think they're important, because I think as a board, I want to be consistent as to how we apply these things, and not just say I like it and so I'm going to choose the things that work in this case, and not that anybody's doing that, but I think it's a trap that we can fall into. Water bodies is another one. This is clearly very near a water body. That's important. Edward Cemetery is another one. I think the design here is problematic. We don't like to have antennas hanging out. I get that we need it for emergency services. So I started off by saying I support it, because I don't want any of these comments to lead anybody to believe that I don't. I think it would be disingenuous to not acknowledge that the issues that we have problems with in other cases exist here. But we need emergency services. And I think to a lesser degree, we need cell coverage. So I still remain supportive. I also think we often recommend CPF purchase. And if you're looking at that parcel, hard to imagine many better parcels for CPF purchase. So I think that we should recommend it. I don't know where that's going to go, but we recommend that all the time for parcels that I think are less significant. I'm not optimistic that the town is going to purchase that, but can you imagine if they did, what a benefit that would be to Springs and our community? It might mess up the plans here, but that might be a trade worth making. And I think, again, to be consistent, we probably ought to, I would vote to recommend the town look at.
I was just keep in mind, it is on the CPF list.
Right, but in so many cases, something on the list comes before us. Normally, it's our way of saying, don't do this, let's buy it instead. I think this plan is fine. I don't think the town's going to buy it, but I do think we'd be remiss as a planning board to not say, hey, this is on your list, something's happening. Have a look. The town knows what's going on. I'm not saying that like, hey guys, check it out. But I think that it would be a good thing for us to do.
It's not like it's easily missed.
Again, I don't want to take up much more time, because other people are going to have something to say. The last thing I'll do is declare lead agency.
Yeah. Is there a motion for that?
Motion.
Second. All those in favor of declaring lead agency?
Aye.
Any opposed? 7-0.
And I'll stop there and maybe, respond if anybody else has anything to say.
Respond or ask Ian a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, Ian, to your point about being consistent with the aesthetic point, that if we say it's okay here, but we're not saying it's not okay elsewhere, even though the two sites are pretty much or closely identical to historic scenic areas and what have you. Aren't there other considerations? I mean, first of all, I think there isn't any spot in Springs that is going to, like we all said, that's going to be perfect in terms of that criterion. However, so keeping that in mind, aren't there other criteria that the other spot would have failed where this one passes?
Absolutely, Lou. I wholeheartedly agree with you, and I truly respect your opinion that every application is different, because I agree 100% with that. But what I do think is if we're going to make a positive declaration on the site and we use as justification for that certain criteria that also exist in this case, that is not consistent. If we choose the ones that are truly different, you would be
So
right.
your point is only to the point of making a positive declaration, not in making the decision to choose this site over the other one.
Well, in everything, I think if you say, I don't like it because,
well,
and the next time that same because exists, but we don't say that for whatever reason, I think that's inconsistent. So
I think we're all saying that this is not the ideal spot for aesthetic considerations. There is, and we're also saying there is no such spot in Springs. However, given all the other considerations, all the other criteria, we feel this is the best spot for this tower.
Yeah, and
that's the argument.
And I've been supportive. What I'm saying is I think sometimes we pile on things that are reasons to not like something, and then we disregard those reasons that would be equally justified reasons not to like a new project because we happen to like the project. And I don't think we should decide whether we like a project and then find all the things that fit for liking it and ignore the things that, exist for not, like avoidance areas. I don't want to go too much on, I don't want to.
Well, no, it's a question of being having a results-driven decision.
And that's what I'm concerned
versus a process-driven decision.
And that's what I'm concerned about.
Yeah.
And I think it'd be hard to say that from a scenic standpoint, that this doesn't have, and Eric, to his credit, looked into this and wrote a fantastic memo and just proved that actually it's a little bit farther away. I still believe that if you're talking about scenic resources, that this is more impactful for a different one that we used as a reason for a pause deck. And I think that was the wrong decision. And I could be wrong about that. I just wanted to talk about it in the context of the conversation.
Okay. Go right ahead, sir.
If I could just maybe add a quick helpful point. So strictly where you're coming from a seeker perspective, I see what you're saying. You should make same decision about similar circumstances. But seeker isn't just about the consideration of environmental impacts. And the regulations actually say that. They say you shouldn't just consider environmental impacts like what we're discussing here, visibility. That boards, when they're considering things, can consider economic or social or the public safety benefit of a certain project when making and weighing whether to approve a project. So this site is singularly unique in the fact that it is providing this great public benefit. And from what you heard from the police department, they're not going to need another site like this if this one goes up. So that's how this one is distinguishable from that seeker perspective that you were mentioning before, in addition to some of the other factors outlined by the planner in his memo, which I'm not going to run through all of them, but that public safety aspect is something this board can consider, and it is something that does make it singularly distinguishable from any of these other projects.
Other than some, I'm sorry.
No, that's it.
Other than some other areas, there's probably other places where you could put a tower that's 185 feet up that would also satisfy the public safety parts, but have some other issues. So of course we'll consider that. It's just that I don't think it's singularly unique here, that it's the only one that could satisfy public safety. It's what the town public safety people have asked for. I'm supportive. I'm not gunning for a pause deck. I didn't pause deck the last one or vote for it. I just, in the interest of a thorough discussion, I just think it's important to mention. So
it's an important conversation. It is. I'll get into it later in terms of whether a pause deck or not. Okay. Does anyone else on the board have any comments that they want to impart? Go ahead, Sharon, and I'll start on the screen. So go ahead.
Yeah. No, I think, Ian brings up a good point, and it was one of my, first thoughts when I started to read, the ideas of the secret considerations. But I do feel that this is different than the other one. Besides the aesthetic, which, I think, like I said, in Springs is surrounded by water, and there's never going to be a perfect spot. So just the renderings that Eric showed us, I felt like it's pretty distant from some of those water, like Gerard Drive and Sammy's. I think the other tower that we paused decked was for me was the major issue for decking that for me was the fall zone and the health issues and how close it was to residential properties. And this at least gets it away from that situation. It was, the fire department was right next to the historical district of Springs. It had to have multiple variances for the fall zone, and you could see it much more clearly from Accabonac Harbor. So I think in that sense, this is a better situation, and I think we could distinguish it. Everything else, I don't want to keep repeating, but that's just the point I wanted to make.
Thanks very much, Sharon. Ed?
Yeah, so just, as a matter of interest, I live adjacent to this property on the northeast side. So, I'm going to certainly be impacted visually by this, but I do feel as though this is far and away the best site for this tower, which I think we need. I mean, we're all taking this on, on the word of Eddie and other people who are cityscape people who are experts on this. That this is absolutely necessary, and I really appreciate Randy pushing on the point of, does it really have to be this high? I think we've now concluded that yes, it does. But I think we need to do that. We need to kind of push on those issues. I do believe this is much less impactful than the other sites that we've been talking about, and I think my voting for POSDEC on the last one was really for the reasons that Sharon just outlined. I think it's a very different consideration. I think this is much less impactful than that site. So I think it comes down to, do we need it? And I think the answer is yes. Does it need to be this tall? I think the answer that we've come to is we believe that it does. Is there, a better place for this to go? I think the answer to that is really no. So I'm definitely supportive of the project.
Thanks very much. Randy, did you have anything else you wanted to add?
Quickly, Sam, the diesel generator, I think we need to know if somebody's proposing a diesel generator and we would like them to use propane. I think the town, whether the police department's required to or not, I think they should meet the noise standard for the backup generator. The one thing I think that's missing in the visuals, which I don't really care, frankly, but the view from the water, if you're out on a boat, you see these towers. And if you're out in Gardner's Bay, and as Ian said, you're going to see this from a long ways away. I don't feel like we need a POSDEC here, but I still feel, with all due respect to Eddie, the only real expert, I don't know what Eddie's credentials are. I mean, I think he's a bright guy and he knows his stuff, but I still feel like I would like to have an opinion from somebody like Cityscape that says they agree with the assessment that that the emergency services needs that height. I don't know if I'm going to get any traction with that, but that would be my only thing. The diesel generator, we'd rather have propane. I think the police department should meet the noise requirement. And I'd still like to, as Ed was saying, I'd still like to get another opinion from an expert other than the police department that says the setup of these emergency service towers has to be 185 feet plus 200 feet. That's it.
Thanks, Randy. I'll go to Michael and then I'll go to you.
I agree with Sharon when she said there's never going to be a perfect spot. Ian said cell towers are controversial, but they are essential to emergency services and, frankly, commerce. When you're out on the road trying to make contact to a homeowner, if you're delivering something, you really, you need a good cell service. One comment about the cell tower and the view from the ocean, from the water. In my youth, I would be a sailor. And when you are looking at the coastline, you are looking for these towers. These are aids to navigation for your sailboat or any watercraft. So I think that's a positive. Thank you. That's it.
Yeah, I just want to get back to Ian because I love debating with Ian so much because he brings out, he forces me to think harder about things. But Ian, just to put it into simple terms, if I had one location, this location that we're reviewing now, which is aesthetically not perfect, and we had another location which is also aesthetically not perfect, but the other location has a fall zone that could decimate, 20 homes. It also can't be as high, which would necessitate building another pole somewhere else, which would be environmentally detrimental. How is it that we're doing anything wrong by saying that we don't apply POSDEC to this?
I'm not saying we're doing anything wrong. I'm saying that the justification we use for the POSDEC. You're right. The fall zone is completely different in this case than the other one. Right. But there's overlap in other reasons we said we can't do it because, and I think some of those, the aesthetics, the scenic resources, are a stronger case in this instance. So I'm not saying in this totality.
A stronger case to POSDEC this than
I do. I think there are more impacts on scenic resources in this case than the other. Mm-hmm. So if we are saying, oh my God, we can't do it because of that, you're right about the other things that are truly unique and different.
In totality, you agree that we should.
Well, no, I did not agree with the POSDEC, and I don't think that this one should be POSDEC. But I'm talking about specific things in that document, not like, oh, just I'm talking about the details.
Yeah.
Not the whole.
Okay. Anything else?
Nope.
Yeah. I don't think that this should be POSDEC. I think that the considerations of the other one that we did POSDEC are there are more of them that spoke in favor of POSDEC. I don't know that I disagree with the idea that this is more or a worse visual impact than the other one that we're talking about on Fort Pond. But it doesn't sound like we're going to POSDEC it anyway. In terms of comparing this to other tower sites, I voted in favor of the brush dump because I was told by the emergency services that they needed it. And I don't need to go further than emergency services telling me that they need it. If they need it, they need it. And I'm going to rely on that representation that they need it and that they need it at 185 feet. I think when you compare this alternative, and we're just talking about the emergency services aspect of it, the 185-foot tower in this proposed site compared to the other alternatives, I think this is the worst place to put it. And there's no cell phone tower certainly not one at 185 feet that anyone's going to stand up and cheer about. But but when you look at the other places in Springs and the priority is to have emergency services with communications everywhere in Springs, I'll use that phrase again. It's the worst choice available, in my opinion. I'm going to run. I'd like
Cityscape one thing actually, because I think,
and then I want to run through the questions.
Manny brings up a good point, and I think the Cityscape representative said they were thinking about cell, RF frequencies as opposed to microwave. Isn't it an easy thing to do just to say, hey, with what the we need for emergency services, is it necessary? And that's for Cityscape. Oh, maybe they're gone.
Cityscape still on, Eric?
They're there. They're muted right now. Susan or Ben, if you could answer Mr. Calder-Piedmont's question.
Okay, I'm not sure I understood the question. Maybe.
Well, my question is, when you Randy pointed out the part of your memo. He said, you referred to just taking the town at their word, and you said, oh, we didn't realize it was emergency services. We thought it was, with respect to cell phone. I mean, I'm not a tech expert here. So I guess what I'm saying is, how hard would it be, or is it even something in your purview or in your repertoire to say, hey, based on what the town is saying, you could quickly look at that and say, yes, that makes sense.
We were all aware of that this was a public safety facility as well as a personal wireless. What I got confused about, I don't know, confused is the word. Well, but based on what I knew before this meeting, I wrongly assumed that there was a coverage issue with the public safety system, the overall coverage. I did not think of the microwave aspect until Mr. Schnell got up and talked about or said that the height, the 185 monopole height, is driven by the microwave backhaul.
I guess that would be my question, is just, now that you know that, is that something that is in your repertoire to easily say?
Sure. Well, RF is RF, and we do RF. I would suggest that maybe if Mr. Snell can get a hold of any engineering report he can get his hands on, that in effect there must have been a RF engineer who planned the microwave link, the one of concern, the one that drives that 185 feet. If he could send any engineering report in relation to that to us, we can review it.
Thank you, Ian. I think that's a great idea. I think it's doing our job.
Is there consensus on the board in favor of that?
Well, I mean,
that's probably
is there any objection
that's a really
to
good
that?
idea. Yeah, that's a better way to put it. Sorry, I didn't mean.
How did you put it? Sorry, what? Say it again.
Well, no,
We're just going to ask
I'm going to see if Mr.
that
Schnell
information-
endorses that idea. I think it's.
So we have preliminary past study reports, which are not field verified because we're not going to pay for them until we know something's going to happen. I can definitely send those over. They're not confidential or anything.
I think look, I think Randy brings up a good point. I don't want to make it hard on you guys, but if you have the information, we have a very capable consultant who can look at it. It's just, like Randy said, we're doing our job, and as long as it's not difficult, I think it makes sense.
We're putting off to another day the possibility that the consultant may come to a different conclusion than the emergency services, and if they do, then we're going to have to make a determination.
We'd be better off for knowing that, though.
No?
That's our job, Sam.
I understand it's our job, but it also puts us in a position where we're going to have to, weigh these things, and but fine. Eddie will send that over, and we'll get a report back, and we'll see where it goes. I don't have a problem with doing our job, certainly. Okay, I'm just going to run through the questions. If anybody has anything I'm looking at the first couple. Are any additional visualizations either in visual assessment or in another form required? Does anybody feel that they are?
No.
Anyone? No?
Not except for what Ian's proposed.
Yeah,
No.
okay. Well, that's
Not visual.
goes without saying. Should any additional information pertaining to noise output be submitted?
No.
No.
Well, what are we going to do about the noise attenuation that is typically used around propane generators?
If I remember correctly, Eddie said that the town propane generator will already have a noise attenuation baffle, and the applicant's representative said that they hadn't anticipated that, but they'll look into it. So I think it's somewhat of an unresolved issue right now. But the applicant, if I'm correct, did say that they'll provide you information about noise. So
we'll get back.
We do want that, yeah.
Did the applicant agree that they can use propane and not diesel?
Next question.
Okay.
The next.
Sorry.
That
Go
is
ahead.
the next.
But I agree, Randy.
Should any additional information pertaining to future generations, containment of liquid fuel spills, or other information to ensure protection of groundwater be submitted? That is your question. And then more.
So I don't have an answer this evening, but I've made a note of it, so we will get back to you.
Let
of
us
course.
know about
Yep.
that. Does the board find the proposed parking and access, which is the same as existing, acceptable?
Yes.
I don't imagine anybody's going to protest that. Should additional information pertaining to landscaping be required? Anyone? No.
I don't think so.
Okay.
No.
All right. And is any additional information pertaining to lighting required? I don't think that's, I think that's a no all around. All right.
And does anybody agree with me that we should send a letter about CPF?
Yeah, oh, thank you. Yes, I agree with that. Okay. Anyone object to sending a letter to the town about purchasing the entire property?
Come on, Lou.
Let's get some unanimity here.
I'm pretty certain the Girl Scouts are not a willing seller.
Well, that may be.
That's never been our
I'm
standard for sending letters.
virtually certain of that, but I think we should send it anyway.
Well, maybe they'll be encouraged to become willing sellers if they know that this board is behind that. Okay. We'll getting everybody mixed up here. Could you please add that to the list of things to do? Thank you. Okay. All right. Thank you very much. We appreciate you being here. Okay. We have another cell tower issue, which presumably won't be as thorny.
Okay, this is an application for T-Mobile at 411 Wainscott Northwest Road, which is adjacent to the East Hampton Airport. There's an existing facility there, an existing 130-foot tall lattice tower. Well, there's two. There's an older one that's slated to be removed eventually, and a new one that was approved just a few years ago. This is an application by T-Mobile on the older tower to swap out a number of antennas and remote radio heads, and also add a diesel generator to the tune of a 48 kilowatt emergency diesel generator, which is to be double lined and on a concrete pad. Cityscape prepared a report for you. Basically, this is an eligible facilities request, which means that under federal law, this is the type of application where basically they've demonstrated that this is a minor change to the facility and therefore approval is recommended. The board may, I shouldn't mention in the Cityscape report, they also confirm that this meets FCC regulations and that the structural analysis passes. The board, though, again, on this one, since it is a diesel generator, may want to talk about containment of spills as well as noise. I will show you, though, on the aerial photograph, if I can just erase the old stuff and start screen sharing with you. I'll show you the rough location of the site. I think most of you know it. But anyway, no, there we go. So the facility itself, you can see the larger East Hampton Airport. If you look, if you see this line here, unnamed street, there's a line that goes up above the property. That is the power line trail that cuts through the woods there. So the site is actually on the property that includes the Maidstone Gun Club, which is to the northwest. And basically, this is the existing compound and facility area back in the woods here, about 1,200 feet from Wainscott Northwest Road / Daniels Hole Road. So basically, this is a swap out. The only, significant change here is adding a diesel generator. You should talk about spills and sound.
Thanks very much. You're with the applicant on this one? Would you like to be heard?
Sure.
So hello, everybody. My name is Ryan Burke. I work for Complete Development Services. We are their permitting agent. In regards to the generator, which you guys spoke of in your last application, sound-wise, it is an emergency backup generator. It only is on when the power is out for the site. Maintenance is the same, 30 minutes every 2 weeks. I don't know specifically what time, but it is during normal business hours. And on the plans that we submitted, at 23 feet when 23 feet away from the generator, it measures at 65 decibels. That is equivalent to normal background music and normal office noise from normal Google search. That's what I figured out. In regards to spills, like he mentioned, it is a double line tank. There's an extra layering along the outside of the storage tank to contain spills and penetrations, and that the generator is installed on top of a new concrete pad to further assist in the spills from going into the ground and soil.
You do know this. This is a water recharge overlay, right, Eric? This area. Okay, so it's that's a significant consideration.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Anything else?
It's the main aquifer for the town.
Yep. I should have asked before the applicant. Mr. Chanel, did you have anything you wanted to add on this particular one?
I guess it's technically more landlord-tenant relating to the old tower and the new tower. T-Mobile's lease expires in November of this year.
Mm-hmm.
I believe they should move to the new tower. They're also, based on their drawings, exceeding their leased area by 6 inches with their generator. So that's something we'll be discussing with them.
Are they the only ones that are on the tower at this point?
On the old tower?
Yeah, on the old tower.
No, everybody's still on the old
They're
tower.
still on the old tower.
Verizon is, I believe, very close to finally getting their C of O, which at that point turns the tower to the town's ownership, and then we can sign the leases with everybody else.
And then they'll all migrate to the other one.
Then you'll get a flurry of applications to
Yeah,
move
yeah.
over. The Sprint actually just submitted an application to decommission their equipment because they got absorbed by T-Mobile.
Mm-hmm.
So that's building permit only. So that should be coming through shortly. AT&T has already negotiated a lease with the town, and I believe the town's already approved it by resolution and permissive referendum and whatnot. It's just we can't sign it because we don't own the tower yet.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So other than that, it's just T-Mobile. And
all right. Well, I guess when you will you be back before the board when you take the old tower down? Is that something
that's demolition? So that's not a
that's not our
that's
department.
Just that's
Okay.
a permit only.
All right. Good. All right. Okay. Thanks very much, Sharon. This one is yours.
Yeah. I feel like that 6 inches was there the last time we reviewed this, right? So it's just an unresolved issue that just keeps hanging in there. But no, this is just a swap out. It's, as long as the new generator meets our HPOD requirements and they contain the spillage and the noise all sets. Other than that, the swap out is just what seems to happen with these things. They need to upgrade them all the time. That's it.
Okay. Does anyone have any comments? Any further comments on this application? Randy, you? Everyone's telling me Randy has questions, has comments. So
could we ask the applicant if they could use propane, because this is right over the deepest aquifer in the entire town. I don't know why we would have diesel storage. And even if you have the right tanks, diesel has to be delivered. And, there's a lot of spills when diesel is delivered. So I just think we should try to get propane there if we can. And I think we should apply the same noise standards we do everywhere else. But I think we are doing that. So,
Randy, grab your seat. I agree with you completely. I asked it's to the applicant. What would be involved in propane, in going to propane on this?
There would be propane in the generator, obviously, but there would also be I believe there's a spare tank that needs to be buried on the property. Now, obviously, with this particular, that's my experience with the propane generators all over Long Island, which we have done before. Being that this is a site that's water-wise is probably not good for that. I would have to check if it's something the board would much rather prefer as a propane generator as opposed to diesel. I don't think that's something that is not possible. But I would have to go to my superiors for that and figure that out for you guys.
How does the rest of the board feel about that?
No, I think that's great if he's going to offer.
I just, is there diesel there now? Is there a backup generator now running on diesel? Or do you?
I have not been to this site before. I'm not sure the other carriers have.
Mr. Schnell may be able to answer that.
I'm not sure if they have a generator or not.
So the town's current generator is diesel with a single walled tank and does not have any kind of spill whatsoever on it.
Really encouraging to hear that.
It doesn't meet any requirements that the town or the county or anybody has. The good news is we're replacing it.
Yeah, no fool.
And I ordered the propane replacement for it in October of last year. And it was supposed to be here by August, and now it's not coming till December.
You're replacing it even though the tower's coming down?
Well, it's feeding the new tower next.
I see.
Yeah.
Oh, so wait, so it's going to be a propane tank?
So we're putting in, the town's installing propane and ripping out the non-compliant diesel.
So that's contradictory to what we heard.
Well, no, I think it's a separate generator.
Yeah. What was that?
It's a separate generator, right?
Yeah, no, this is the town's generator.
Yeah.
So the different backups. Okay, so right now, all the old tower is only on diesel.
Yeah, well, just the town's equipment.
The town's equipment.
The town only powers the town.
And do you happen to know what powers
Verizon has a generator. I believe it's diesel because they don't have a separate tank, so it's got to be diesel skid tank.
Well, it sounds like if it's feasible, to the applicant, that the board prefers propane whenever possible.
If you could, and particularly here. So if you could, to the applicant, if you will, Eric, do we get a letter out on that or to facilitate the question being answered? Or do we just?
Oh, yeah.
But I'm just asking logistically how we're doing that.
Well, we'll put out a post-meeting memo.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. All right, so you could put that into the post-meeting memo. Then.
So the propane tank requires 10 feet of spacing around anything that can produce a spark. So that will increase their land use area, but I'm sure the town would have no problem giving it to them at no charge to
let me ask you a question.
Propane.
Let me ask you a question that maybe I could be completely wrong. Does the fact that the gun club is nearby have any impact on that consideration?
No, where we are, somebody would have to leave the gun club and walk quite a bit to
and turn in a different direction
near there. Yeah.
Okay. I just want to make sure. So, the last thing we want is to have that.
It can be a little unnerving up there if you don't expect it. And like the first time I was up there happened to be the day that the police department was requalifying.
Mm-hmm.
And wow. Was like, am I actually going to get hit? But no, you're all good if you're there.
Okay, good. As long as they're pointing in a different direction. Yeah. Okay. All right. Thank you very much. Thank you for being the last one and for waiting so patiently and accommodating that question. Okay. All right. So we don't have any further discussion on this one. Okay. All right. The last matter that we have on tonight is the urban renewal modification for 137 Springs Fireplace Road. And we don't have any board member, and I presume the applicant's been made aware of this application.
Yes.
Okay. So Eric will lead us through this. Matter.
This is a fairly straightforward request. As you know, with most UR map modifications you get, they'll be requesting to modify lot lines, things of that sort. In this case, the subject property, which you can see highlighted on the screen, and I'm zoomed out now so you can see where this is. This is Springs Fireplace Road, basically the industrial district, the Hart Industrial District of town. Obviously, it's this highlighted parcel. This small section along Springs Fireplace Road, the zoning used to basically, that CI zone used to come all the way down south and then instead of terminating where you see this yellow boundary line, it terminated at the boundary of this lot and then the two others to the south. The town board a number of years ago, and at the time, years ago, when it was still in a residential zoning district, this property, it had a residence on it. That since I believe there was a fire, whatever it was, the residence is removed. And basically the town board discussed the zone change, felt, and I believe correctly, that the appropriate zoning for these lots would be commercial industrial rather than having residences on them. They're very small. But, long story short, the town board did grant that zone change. Now, those 3 lots, including this subject lot, are, zone CI. They are also within a UR map, which is, referenced in the memorandum. However, all of the UR maps in town have a notation that identifies that CI lots are to be exempted from the UR map. It's meant for residential lots, for road improvement, for things of that sort. So CI lots are exempt. There's only one situation where they're not, and I think that's actually going to be fixed soon. But basically, CI lots are not supposed to be included in the UR map. However, now that they changed the zoning here and made this CI, they have never amended the UR map. And this lot is still included in the UR map. It has credits that it's supposed to pay into. It's not supposed to, though, because now it's own CI. So basically, this request is just to change the notation on the UR map, exempting this map from that study. So we support it. It's conducive. It matches what the town board did. We have no issue with it. Neither does our consulting engineer, Vinny Gaudiello.
Very well. Does anyone have any objection to this? I guess it's an proposed modification.
No objection.
No objection all around?
Yep.
Okay, well, good. Then on that positive note, I shouldn't use the word positive, on that unobjectionable note.
Motion to adjourn?
Yeah, actually, just one thing before you do. Next week, we have the entire meeting, except for, I presume, regular meeting issues, which there may be 1 or 2, scheduled for the continuation of the Wayne Scott Commercial Center.
Basically, we have one matter on, but it basically is the same as a resolution. It's a wrap-up memo that we added on. But also, it had been requested that we have a discussion about a future affordable housing project for the town. If we don't have time for that, we won't get to it. It's not a rush thing, but I put it on the tentative agenda in case there's extra time.
I'll take a look at that and let you know what I think.
Okay, sure.
All right. Okay, now, Ian.
Motion to adjourn?
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. We are adjourned. Thank you, Matt at LTV. Thank you,
You're
Jody.
very welcome. Good night.